Tonight, we're uncovering the surprising history of every fossil Pokémon. This is a topic with a lot to uncover, but I'll keep my narration calm so you can still drift off to sleep. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here. And if this is your first night, just comment night 1. Now back to the video. In 1996, the first fossil Pokémon waited in the darkness beneath Mount Moon. A trainer could uncover either the Helix fossil or the Dome fossil, then carry that small fragment of stone all the way to a laboratory on Cinnabar Island. There, through a process that seemed almost impossible, a creature from a vanished age could breathe again. The Helix fossil became Omanyte, a small ammonite-like Pokémon with curling tentacles and a tightly wound shell. The Dome fossil became Kabuto, whose smooth armored body resembled the ancient horseshoe crabs and trilobites of our own world. And then there was Old Amber, an even more delicate relic containing the genetic trace of Aerodactyl, a prehistoric flyer revived into something far more dangerous than its amber prison suggested. These Pokémon were never simply dinosaurs brought back from extinction. Their remains had spent unimaginable lengths of time buried in stone, saturated with minerals, and transformed into fossils. When scientists restored them, those mineralized remains seemed to leave a permanent mark. That is why so many of them emerged as rock types. Living creatures, certainly, but creatures whose bodies still carried the memory of the earth around them. Kabuto's own records place it on ancient beaches around 300 million years ago. That makes it one of the oldest, specifically dated Pokémon in the entire series. Yet the world of Pokémon is not always consistent about its own distant past. At the ruins of Alph, one researcher suggests that ancient Pokémon life began only 2 million years ago. Somewhere between those two statements is a mystery buried deeper than any fossil bed. In the real world, the inspirations behind these Pokémon reach even farther back. Anorith, the strange sea predator of Hoenn, recalls Anomala, an animal from the Cambrian seas more than 500 million years ago. Omanyte resembles ammonites, shell-bearing swimmers that survived across vast stretches of prehistoric time before disappearing near the end of the age of dinosaurs. Aerodactyl takes its shape from pterosaurs, the winged reptiles that ruled Jurassic skies long before birds became common. Each new region added another quiet layer to this ancient record. In Hoenn's Route 111 desert, the root and claw fossils revealed Lileep and Anorith. Both were sea-dwelling creatures, which makes more sense when you learn that the dry desert was once believed to have been a sea basin. Beneath the sand, the region had preserved the memory of an ocean. Sinnoh introduced Cranidos and Shieldon, revived from the skull and armor fossils. Cranidos was all force and momentum, with a reinforced head built for charging. Shieldon was the opposite, broad, patient, and protected by a face like an ancient shield. Their evolutions, Rampardos and Bastiodon, turned those simple survival strategies into something monumental. Then, in Unova, the cover fossil and plume fossil brought back Tirtouga and Archen. Tirtouga carried the shape of colossal marine turtles that once crossed Cretaceous seas. Archen resembled Archaeopteryx, one of the most famous early bird-like animals ever found. Its evolution, Archeops, is often described as an ancestor of avian Pokémon, though it also has a peculiar habit of losing confidence when it becomes weakened. Kalos gave the fossil tradition its clearest dinosaurs. Tyrant and Tyrantrum drew from tyrannosaurs, while Amara and Aurorus borrowed the long-necked form of sauropods. Tyrantrum was restored as a powerful predator from a world close to the end of the dinosaurs. Aurorus, with its sail-like neck frills and cold northern habitat, felt gentler, though no less ancient. Most of the real animals that inspired these marine reptiles, flying reptiles and dinosaurs, disappeared around 66 million years ago, during the Great Extinction event that ended the Cretaceous period. In Pokémon, however, extinction is not always final. A shell in a cave wall, a claw beneath desert sand, a feather pressed into stone. Sometimes that is enough to let an entire species return, and then Galar made the process far stranger. Instead of reviving one complete creature from one complete fossil, Cradily combined mismatched fossil pieces into creatures like Dracovish, Arctozolt, Dracozolt, and Arctovish. Their bodies look uneasy because they were never meant to fit together. They are not simply ancient Pokémon restored to life. They are accidental chimeras, assembled from an incomplete understanding of the past. The history of fossil Pokémon has always been a history of fragments. A shell, a skull, a sail, a plume, a jaw, a claw. Every one of them is a message from a world that no longer exists, brought into the present, with just enough mystery still clinging to the stone. A fossil is a peculiar kind of monument. It marks the exact moment an organism became a memory, trapped in stone. In our own world, a fossil offers a snapshot of deep time, a hint of shapes and lives that no longer walk the earth. In the world of Pokémon, that stone is not the end of the story. It is a waiting room. When a trainer steps into a laboratory on Cinnabar Island, or into a dusty corner of Hoenn's desert research station, or into the stark white halls of a facility in Galar, a piece of rock is placed into a machine, and from that rock, life is forced out. When that life returns, it has been fundamentally altered by the journey. The fossilized bone, shell, or claw has rested in such a mineral-rich environment for so long that the creature itself emerges with a body hardened by stone. This is why so many fossil Pokémon carry the rock type, a physical signature of the tomb they escaped. This is the central complication. Are these creatures authentic survivors from an era long gone, their minds and forms perfectly preserved? Or are they something stranger, a living interpretation of what science thought the past looked like, carved from the memories buried in the earth? The oldest specific date attributed to a fossil Pokémon belongs to Kabuto, which its Pokédex entry claims inhabited beaches 300 million years ago. That places it in the ancient seas of the Paleozoic, among creatures that lived before the continents had fully settled. Yet if you visit the ruins of Alph in Johto, a researcher there offers a very different timeline, suggesting that ancient Pokémon life only began 2 million years ago. Somewhere between these two claims, a mystery is buried deeper than any fossil bed. The past does not give up its secrets easily, even when its inhabitants can suddenly breathe again. Each region has offered a different way of looking through that window. In Hoenn, the desert that holds the root and claw fossils was once an ocean. When Lileep and Anorith are revived, they feel less like creatures of the sand and more like echoes of a sea that no longer exists. In Sinnoh, Cranidos and Shieldon represent pure extremes of survival, one all momentum, the other completely unyielding. In Unova, the cover and plume fossils gave us Tirtouga and Archen. Archen is particularly fascinating, as its Pokédex entry describes it as the ancestor of all bird-like Pokémon, a living link to a crucial evolutionary leap. Kalos brought fossil Pokémon into the clearest dinosaur light. Tyrunt and Tyrantrum resemble Cretaceous tyrannosaurs, and Amora and Aurorus evoke the long-necked sauropods of the Jurassic. These feel closer to what we expect from a prehistoric animal. Then came Galar, and Galar changed everything. The fossils of Galar were not found whole. They were fragments, mismatched pieces of bone and sinew scattered across the wilds. Cradily, the scientist responsible for their revival, did not have the patience for a perfect reconstruction. She combined a fish's head with a dinosaur's hind legs. She fused a reptile's torso onto the wings of a bird. The results, Dracovish, Arctozolt, Dracozolt, and Arctovish, are uncomfortable to look at. They do not move gracefully. Their bodies fight against themselves. They are not authentic survivors. They are chimeras, stitched together from an incomplete understanding of the past, and they force a question that echoes back through every fossil revival. How do we know the process was ever clean? The journey from a moonlit cavern in Kanto to the unsettling fusion lab in Galar is a long one. Every fossil found along the way, the helix and dome, The root and claw, the skull and armor, the cover and plume, the jaw and sail, each one is a different key to a different door. Some lead to a past that feels almost familiar. Others open onto a world so old that the light of the sun was different when these creatures were alive. If Kabuto is a window into a world 300 million years old, and Anorith is a window into a world 500 million years old, then the act of resurrection itself must be scrutinized. The revival machine does not just thaw out a perfectly preserved animal. It takes mineralized rock and restructures it. It uses an ancient genetic blueprint, but it is rebuilding a life from a foundation of stone. The rock type is not just a category, it is a confession. The process leaves a mark, and that mark is a permanent reminder that these Pokémon did not come naturally into the present. They were pulled here. As we move forward, stepping deeper into the eras they came from, and examining the specific details of each creature's lore, the question of authenticity will follow us. Every shell, every feather, every fang is a piece of evidence in a debate about whether the past can ever truly be brought to the present. The museum where time woke up is not a quiet place. It is a place of unanswered questions, hiding in plain sight behind glass cases and spinning fossil machines. The question sticks with us as we leave the Museum of Kanto. Are the creatures step out of the revival machine true survivors of deep time, or are they something else? Something shaped by the very technology that brought them back. To find out, we have to step away from the games entirely and take a journey backwards through the real geological timeline. We start at the end, 66 million years ago. A 6-mile-wide asteroid slams into the Yucatan Peninsula. In a single blow, the Cretaceous period closes forever, and 3/4 of life on Earth vanishes. Everything that lived before that moment belongs to a vanishingly small club. The vast majority of living things die and leave no trace at all. They are devoured, they decay, they are scattered by the elements. For an organism to become a fossil, the conditions must be perfect: rapid burial, still water, the right chemistry in the soil. Most of life simply disappears without a single recognizable trace. Real paleontology is a science of fragments. We find a single tooth and build a monster around it. We find a footprint hardened into stone, and we reconstruct an entire creature. It is a science of interpretation, constrained by what little evidence survived. In the Pokémon world, the rules are different. The fossil is not a clue, it is a blueprint. The revival machine does not interpret incomplete remains. It restores complete life. It fills in the missing information, using a process the games call mineral infusion, granting the creature a rock-type body in the process. This brings us to the recurring question behind every revival machine, from the lab on Cinnabar Island to the deepest caves in Kalos. How much of the revived creature is genuinely ancient, and how much of it is new? When the machine breathes life into a fossil, is it tapping into a biological memory of a time before humans? Or is it constructing a modern chimera, a creature that looks prehistoric, but is fundamentally a product of modern technology? The rock type itself might be the biggest clue. Is it a natural trait of the ancient organism, or is it a scar left behind by the revival process itself? We travel further back in time, past the Jurassic, where Aerodactyl ruled the skies, past the Triassic and the Permian, through the Devonian and the Silurian, until we reach the Cambrian seas over 500 million years ago. This is the dawn of complex animal life, and it is where the oldest inspiration for a fossil Pokémon is found. Anorith and Armaldo, creatures that look like something from an alien world, were inspired by a real predator named Anomalocaris. But even here, the timeline fractures. The Pokédex states that Kabuto lived 300 million years ago, but a scientist studying ancient texts at the ruins of Alph insists that all Pokémon life appeared only 2 million years ago. This is not a mistake, It is a contradiction baked into the world. The real geological timeline is a steady march of eons. The Pokémon timeline is a pile of shattered rocks, each piece telling a different story. This is the world before Kanto, before humanity, a world we can only piece together from contradictory entries and the silent testimony of the fossils themselves. To understand the creatures we pull from the ground, we must first understand the fractured ground they came from. Consider the helix fossil and the dome fossil, the first choices offered to trainers in Mount Moon. They are not merely ancient shells, they are artifacts of a lost evolutionary argument. Omanyte resembles an ammonite, a shelled cephalopod that vanished alongside the non-avian dinosaurs. Kabuto resembles a horseshoe crab, an animal whose real relatives still crawl through shallow coastal waters today. Yet in Kanto, both are treated as relics from a world that no longer exists. Their descendants make the mystery even stranger. Omastar is described as a fearsome hunter that used its tentacles to capture prey, but it supposedly died out because its shell grew too heavy. Kabutops is described as an agile predator with blades capable of slicing prey apart. These are not harmless curiosities preserved in stone. They are fully formed members of ancient ecosystems, revived into a modern world, with no true place prepared for them. And then there is Aerodactyl. Unlike the shell-bearing fossils, Aerodactyl is not linked to one clean, real-world animal. It carries traits of pterosaurs, bats, and dragons, as though prehistoric life in this world followed rules stranger than our own. Its mega-evolution makes that suspicion impossible to ignore. The revived creature can transform into an even more savage form, described as closer to what it was in ancient times. If that is true, then the ordinary Aerodactyl restored by the machine may already be incomplete. It may be an ancient body, filtered through modern science, carrying only an approximation of its original potential. The fossils do not just preserve dead Pokémon, they preserve uncertainty. Every revival is an experiment performed on a past nobody truly understands. The process of fossilization is a slow act of geological alchemy. Over millions of years, underground water replaces the organic material of a bone, molecule by molecule. The original collagen and marrow are gone, replaced by silica, calcite, or pyrite. The creature vanishes, but a perfect stone copy remains. In the real world, that stone copy is just a rock. In the world of Pokémon, that stone copy holds a ghost waiting to be woken. And when it wakes, it does not emerge perfectly organic. It emerges carrying the stone within it. This is the root of the most consistent rule in paleontological Pokémon lore. Almost every revived fossil Pokémon is a rock type. Let us sit with that rule for a moment, because it immediately creates a fascinating contradiction. The creatures that inspired these Pokémon did not live in the dirt. Omanyte and Omastar are based on ammonites, which drifted through prehistoric oceans. They are rock and water. Kabuto and Kabutops are based on trilobites and horseshoe crabs, hunters of the ancient seafloor. Rock and water. Anorith is based on the Cambrian predator Anomalocaris, arguably the first great ocean apex predator. Rock and bug. Lileep and Cradily are based on crinoids, sea lilies that swayed in underwater currents. Rock and grass. Archen and Archeops are based on Archaeopteryx, the first bird, a creature of the Jurassic skies. Rock and flying. Aerodactyl is a pterosaur, master of the Cretaceous air. Rock and flying. Aurorus is a sauropod, which walked on land but thrived in temperate Jurassic forests. Rock and ice. Not a single one of them, no matter how adapted to the ocean or the air, escapes the rock typing. It acts as an anchor, a gravitational pull back to the earth. The consistency of this rule across generations suggests it is not a coincidence. It is a law of the universe we are observing. The specific mechanics of fossil revival in the Pokémon world give us a very clear explanation for this phenomenon. The process is not simply extracting pure DNA from a frozen sample. The fossils used are mineral casts of the original creature. The integrity of the fossil is a stone structure. To reverse the fossilization process, scientists at labs like the one on Cinnabar Island or under the Devon Corporation do not simply incubate a cell, they must replenish the tissue that has been lost to the stone. They fill the fossil with living material, but the stone itself plays an active role. The revival machine infuses the mineral framework with energy, creating a hybrid creature whose fundamental biology is intertwined with the rock that preserved it. The rock typing is not a natural trait these ancient species evolved. It is the technological and geological scar they bear from the revival process. They are not authentic prehistoric creatures, they are reconstructed revenants, and the rock type is the mark of their salvation and their curse. They are not merely ordinary creatures discovered underground. The revival process actively changes their relationship with rock and mineral, weaving it into their DNA. This gives the rock typing a profound symbolic weight. Every other Pokémon species is the product of continuous evolution, a thread of life stretching unbroken to the present. A fossil Pokémon is a discontinuity. They represent a break in that thread, an extinction event. They spent an incomprehensible amount of time as inert matter, locked in stone, feeling nothing, experiencing the slow grind of deep time. When they are revived, they carry that experience in their cellular structure. The rock type is the physical manifestation of the geological era they were entombed in. They are not simply animals, they are monuments. They are walking fragments of deep history, and the stone of that history never leaves them. It explains their lower speed stats, their specific weaknesses, their slower, more ponderous nature. They are still heavy with the weight of the years they spent beneath the ground. The very act of being fossilized and revived gives them a relationship with rock and mineral that no ordinary creature can understand. They are living connections to the Paleozoic seas, the Jurassic forests, and the Cretaceous skies. This unusual rule, this universal rock typing, is the defining feature of the group. It is the thread that connects a tiny trilobite fossil from Mount Moon to a bizarre chimera created from separate parts in the Galar region. Interestingly, the exception to this rule proves it perfectly. The fossil Pokémon of the Galar region, the chimeras like Dracozolt and Arctozolt, are not rock types. They are dragon, water, electric, and ice types. Why? Because they were never unified fossils. They are composite creatures, assembled from unrelated pieces. They lack the complete mineral structure that characterizes a naturally buried and fossilized organism. They were built, not revived. This confirms that the rock typing is absolutely intrinsic to the fossilization and revival process. Without the unified stone template, the rock typing vanishes, replaced by the raw elemental natures of their disparate parts. This deep connection to the mineral world naturally stems from the very first fossils discovered. The story of fossil Pokémon begins not in a deep underwater trench, but in the caves of Kanto, and the history of how those first fossils were found, fought over, and finally revived set the stage for every rule that followed. That mineral stain we discussed, the strange stone-like biology that clings to every revived ancient Pokémon, has a very specific origin point. It is not an abstract concept drawn up by a distant professor. It was born from a physical object you could hold in your inventory, a decision you had to make in a very specific place in the winter of 1996. We have to return to the very foundation. Return to the world of Pokémon Red, Blue and Green. This was the first time fossils appeared in the games, and they did not arrive as clean, labeled exhibits in a sterile environment. They appeared as strange, vaguely unsettling choices, hidden deep inside the echoing, meteor-carved expanse of Mount Moon. A crater punched into the rock by a falling star in ancient times. It was the perfect tomb, a silent, cold vault for creatures that had existed before humanity itself. Inside, in the quiet of the rock, you discovered two unmoving stones: the helix fossil, a coiled spiral; the dome fossil, a segmented shield. Two paths, two creatures, one decision. The game emphasized your role perfectly. You were an archaeologist, a grave robber, a savior of the past, all wrapped in the journey of a young trainer. You could only carry one. Choosing the Helix meant the dome was lost to your save file forever. Choosing the dome meant the Helix stayed buried in the mountain, erased from your journey. It was a surprisingly heavy burden for a simple item pickup. And soon after, in the quiet halls of the Pewter City Museum of Science, a scientist studying a lump of tree sap placed a third piece of deep time into your hands. The old amber, carrying the genetic whisper of a winged predator from the age of dinosaurs. These three artifacts, the Helix, the dome, and the amber, became the franchise's very first direct encounter with ancient life. The first fossil Pokémon. You carried your chosen stone, or your amber, south to the volcanic island of Cinnabar. There, in a hidden laboratory that felt more like a science fiction dream than a part of the Pokémon world, a scientist placed your fossil into a strange and buzzing machine, and in that moment, something impossible happened. A creature from 300 million years ago coughed to life. The stone skin of the mineral infusion, the rock type we discussed in the last chapter, had permanently taken hold. The machine had not just revived an organism, it had rebuilt it in stone. Omanyte, the spiral Pokémon, Kabuto, the dome Pokémon, Aerodactyl, the fossil Pokémon. They returned to the world of the living, dragging their ancient epoch right into your party. Omanyte, a Pokémon based on the Ammonite, a shelled cephalopod that once filled the ancient seas. Kabuto, a creature shaped like the trilobites and horseshoe crabs that scuttled across the ocean floor for nearly 500 million years. And Aerodactyl, a fearsome pterosaur that ruled the Jurassic skies. This simple, stark decision, choose one, lose the other, wait for resurrection, created one of Pokémon's oldest and most beloved traditions, archaeology as adventure. The idea of the past, not just as a dusty textbook in a library, but as a living, breathing mystery to uncover, a force to be brought back into the light. The Kanto fossils established the rules. The loop was set. Find the artifacts. Make the choice. Bring the dead back to life. But the fossil record in the Pokémon world was far from complete. The bones and amber of that first generation told only a fraction of the story of the planet's deep past. The concept of an ancient Pokémon was a seed planted deep in the Kanto soil, waiting for the right conditions to grow. The journey into the past was far from over. It was simply trading the quiet, humming machines of the Cinnabar Island lab for the silent, waiting hieroglyphs of an older, deeper world. The foundation was laid in Kanto, the Helix, the dome, the amber. They established the core of the tradition, the choice, the sacrifice, the resurrection. It was a simple decision, but it carved a space for the lost world in the very fabric of the player's journey. This was where the identity of the fossil Pokémon was forged, in a cave, in a museum, in a choice. The adventure of archaeology had been born, and the very first fossils of 1996 ensured that the Pokémon world's deep past would never stay buried for long. The seed was planted, the earth was ready. From the first moment we held that Helix or Dome in our inventory, a question began to form. What exactly had we chosen? The answer required us to leave the mountain and head toward the sea. But the mountain itself holds the key to understanding why our choice was so significant. Mount, moon is layered with meaning. Its very name hints at the celestial. The moonstones found inside are direct evidence of a meteor impact, a literal stone from the sky. This cosmic event shapes the ecology of the entire region, but it also unearths something older. The thieves of Team Rocket dig for profit. The scientists dig for knowledge. Amid their conflicting objectives, a simple quiet room holds the truth. A super nerd stands guard over two fossils whose identities have been truly forgotten by time. He does not know what they are. The game gives him no dialogue that reveals their type, their nature, or their origin. They are simply shapes in rock, the helix and the dome, names given to the stones, not the creatures within. The player stands before this choice. and it is a moment of profound irony. You are a child. You have no scientific training. The super nerd himself cannot tell you which one is better, and yet you must decide the fate of an entire lineage of life. Will the Helix fossil be revived, bringing back a creature of the ancient seas? Or will the dome fossil take its place, restoring a creature of the ancient tide pools? You choose blindly. You choose based on a coloured sprite in a menu. This is not science. It is faith, or whim, or the simple desire to be different from your rival. The fossil you do not pick is lost, buried in the museum or the rival's collection. The entire future of that species depends on a guess made in a dark cave. This moment, as early as 1996, perfectly captures the relationship between the player and the fossil system. You are not a researcher, you are a discoverer, and discovery is rarely informed. It is messy, incomplete, and driven by chance. Leaving the mountain, the fossil in your bag feels heavy, but the story of Moon's fossils is not yet complete. The museum in Pewter City stands as a monument to the artifacts of the mountain, and here in a quiet display case lies the old amber. It is a fossil, but it is a different kind fossil. It is not a bone replaced by stone. It is a prison of resin, preserving the ghost of a creature within. Where the helix and dome are obvious in their shape, the old amber is subtle. It holds the outline of a wing, the shadow of a feather. It is an even older mystery, hidden away in a quiet corner of the museum. The researchers in Pewter have not tried to revive it. They do not have the technology, or perhaps they do not have the courage. The old amber sits, waiting for a trainer who sees not just a stone, but a window into a world even older than the sea creatures of the mountain. It waits for the right question to be asked, and the right technology to answer it. The answer to that question changes everything, turning a simple museum piece into the living ancestor of the skies. That technology waits on Cinnabar Island, in a laboratory built beside a volcano. It is one of the strangest places in Kanto. The island is known for warmth, for research, and for the unsettling sense that its scientists are reaching into places nature has sealed away. Inside the laboratory, a researcher offers a promise that would once have sounded impossible. Bring him a fossil, leave it with him, walk away for a moment, and when you return, the ancient world will be breathing again. The machine does not merely identify the fossil. It does not display a diagram or offer a theory. It restores life. The helix fossil becomes Omanyte, a small creature with curling tentacles and a shell marked by the shape that gave its fossil its name. The dome fossil becomes Kabuto, armoured, low to the ground, with eyes that seem designed for the dark ocean floor. And the old amber reveals Aerodactyl, a prehistoric predator with vast wings, sharp teeth, and a cry unlike anything else in Kanto. This is where the meaning of the choice becomes clear. The fossils were never simply collectibles. They were dormant possibilities. Each one contained a complete species waiting beyond the limits of ordinary time. The player does not evolve these creatures from an egg or catch them in tall grass. They manufacture the conditions for an extinction to end, and yet the revival is strangely casual. No committee debates whether Omanyte belongs in modern waters. No ranger asks what Aerodactyl might do to the ecosystem. The laboratory hands this impossible creature to a child, as though returning a species from the dead is no more dangerous than receiving a gift. In the world of Pokémon, wonder arrives before caution. The question is not whether humanity should revive the past. The question is whether you remembered to bring the right fossil. That simplicity is part of the magic. A single exchange transforms the abstract idea of prehistory into a partner that can travel beside you. The ancient creature can battle, grow stronger, evolve, and eventually stand against champions. Its extinction is not its ending. It is merely a long pause in its journey. We left off standing deep inside Mount Moon, far from the glow of moonlight that filters through the upper caves. We were facing a super nerd who guards a choice between two fossils, each one sealed in rock, representing an organism that thrived in a world completely alien to our own. One is the helix fossil, one is the dome fossil. They are the first ancient creatures the games ever asked you to revive. Let us consider the Helix first. The Helix fossil restores into Omanyte. Omanyte is a small shelled creature, no taller than a few inches in its most common depiction, with a body that is mostly soft tissue protected by that unmistakable spiral shell. In the games, it is described as an ancient Pokémon that lived in the primordial seas. It was restored from the Helix fossil, and the name Omanyte is a direct reference to the fossil itself. A helix, a spiral. It is not merely a decorative curl. The spiral is a mathematical structure of growth. Each chamber of the shell records a stage in the creature's life, expanding outward in a logarithmic curve that never changes angle, only scale. Omanyte is the embodiment of this ancient geometry made flesh. Its tentacles trail behind it, each one capable of delivering a sharp sting or grasping onto prey. Its eyes are round and dark, watching the water around it with a patient stillness that belongs to an older, quieter time. It is one of a handful of prehistoric Pokémon that can still be found swimming in the modern world, but only because of human interference in the lab. It is a survivor, pulled across the boundary of extinction by technology. To understand the weight of this tiny creature, we must trace its real-world inspiration back into the ancient oceans. Omanyte is inspired by the Ammonites. Ammonites were a group of cephalopods that first appeared in the Devonian period. Often called the Age of Fishes, it started roughly 419 million years ago and ended about 359 million years ago. That alone is an immense stretch of time. But Ammonites did not stop there. They survived the late Devonian extinction, thrived through the Carboniferous and Permian, nearly vanished in the Great Dying at the end of the Permian, recovered in the Triassic, and then diversified explosively in the Jurassic and Cretaceous. For over 300 million years, they dominated the seas. To put that in perspective, the entire lineage of modern humans stretches back maybe 300,000 years. Omanyte's kind witnessed the assembly and breakup of Pangaea, the rise of the dinosaurs, the first birds, the first flowering plants, and they kept swimming, kept growing their spirals, generation after generation. Their fossils are found on every continent, in every type of sedimentary rock, from the deserts of Morocco to the cliffs of southern England. They were among the ultimate survivors of their domain. But Omanyte does not remain a small spiral-shelled creature for long. In the games, when it reaches level 40, it evolves into Omastar. This is a profound shift in form and function. Omastar's shell becomes much larger, heavier, and more strongly ribbed. The tentacles multiply and thicken, and now support sharp barbs. The beak that was subtle in Omanyte becomes a massive, crushing weapon. The Pokédex in Fire Red notes that this Pokémon was aggressive and powerful in ancient times, and that it could supposedly bore through a thick stone plate with its beak in a single bite. It is a predator from a sea no longer recognizable to us. The shell, which once served primarily as a buoyancy float and protection, now becomes an anchor. It is speculated in some entries that Omastar was so weighed down by its own shell that it could no longer move freely. It became an ambush predator, burying itself in the seafloor or clinging to rocks, waiting for prey to come within range of its tentacles. This strategy works exceptionally well in a stable environment, but it also creates a terrifying fragility. This is where the darker theme of Omastar's story takes hold. The lore surrounding Omastar suggests that it may have hunted so successfully that it helped write its own extinction. Its specialization as a heavy, anchored predator meant that when the prey it depended on declined, it had no way to adapt or pursue new food sources. Some entries imply that Omastar may have simply run out of prey, or that its weight became a fatal disadvantage in changing currents or falling sea levels. This reflects a real principle in paleontology. Very successful predators are often the most vulnerable to extinction. Large body size, heavy armor, and strict dietary requirements are traits that make a species resilient in stable times, but disastrous during rapid change. The Ammonites themselves offer a parallel. In the late Cretaceous, before the asteroid struck, Many Ammonite species had already developed bizarre shell shapes and heavy ribbing. Some had uncoiled shells, others had massive spines. This is a classic sign of a group in decline. The asteroid accelerated their end, but their golden age was already fading. Omastar's heavy shell and crushing beak are signs of a creature that reached the peak of its power at the worst possible time. And that is the story of the Helix fossil, a spiral that begins in the Devonian seas, winds through 300 million years of history, closes in extinction at the end of the Cretaceous, and then opens again in a laboratory on Cinnabar Island. The spiral is a symbol of growth, time, and the cycle of life and death. But the dome fossil sitting beside it in that moon cavern tells a different story. It is the story of a creature that chose a different path. A shell designed not as a spiral, but as a shield. A body armoured in overlapping plates, and eyes that saw the world through thousands of separate lenses. The Helix spoke of specialization and weight. The dome has a history that moves in a quieter, older current, reaching back even further into the deep time of the early Paleozoic. Omanyte and its ancestors. The Ammonites were masters of the open ocean, their spiral shells drifting with the currents for over 300 million years, but hidden in the same fossil beds, pressed into the same ancient rock. A completely different kind of life survived. Not a mollusk drifting with the tides, but an arthropod clinging to the bottom. Not a spiral, but a shield. The dome fossil holds a creature that was built for an entirely different world. The world just beneath the shore. Kabuto takes its design from two major sources of real prehistoric life: the trilobites that dominated the early seas, and the horseshoe crabs that still limp along the coastlines of our own world today. Its name means helmet, a description that fits its domed shell perfectly. Its eyes are large and multifaceted, designed for murky water. Its legs are jointed and sharp. Everything about Kabuto suggests a life spent hiding and waiting, buried just beneath the sand, watching the shadows pass overhead. But the most extraordinary detail about Kabuto comes from its Pokédex description. According to the entries in several games, Kabuto lived on beaches 300 million years ago. 300 million. This is the oldest specific numerical date given for any Pokémon's existence in the entire franchise. We are not in the age of dinosaurs. We are in the Paleozoic, before the first dinosaur eggs were ever laid, when the land was still largely barren and the arms race of life was happening exclusively in the water. This incredibly ancient date, however, creates an immediate problem. If you travel to the ruins of Alf in Johto, a researcher working on the site will tell you that Pokémon life in the region only began to flourish around 2 million years ago. Holding these two pieces of lore in mind, the timeline of the Pokémon world fractures. Is the science of the fossil lab wrong? Is the ruins of Alf scientist studying a different, much younger era of life? Or does the history of this world simply fold over itself in ways our understanding of geology cannot grasp? The contradiction remains unresolved. A quiet mystery baked right into the core of the franchise's history. Kabuto is a passive shield, a living fossil content to wait. But evolution does not permit stagnation for long. When Kabuto evolves, the shell cracks open and a nightmare steps out. Kabutops is a completely different animal. It rises up on two legs, its body becomes sleek and streamlined. Its forelimbs become massive, blade-like scythes. The Pokédex describes these blades as sharp enough to cut through steel and capable of draining the bodily fluids of its prey. It is no longer a scavenger. It is an active, swift and deadly hunter. The quiet shoreline creature has become a prehistoric nightmare, a reminder of how quickly the rules of survival can change when a species makes a leap forward. And the shores of that ancient world were just the beginning. Once life had mastered the seas and the coasts, the next frontier lay entirely overhead. The old amber, resting in the same layer of stone found in the depths of Mount Moon, holds the memory of a creature that looked toward the sky. Kabutops and its kin were the blades beneath the shore, but above the waves, the first shadows were beginning to stretch across the Jurassic sky. The story of the fossil Pokémon is far from over, and the Age of Wings was just beginning. Old Amber revives into Aerodactyl, one of the most immediately recognizable prehistoric Pokémon ever created. Its body is built from the silhouette of a pterosaur, the flying reptiles that ruled the skies alongside dinosaurs. But its face carries something more monstrous. Its jaws are packed with long, uneven teeth, and its wings are vast sheets of leathery skin stretched across elongated fingers. Aerodactyl does not resemble a graceful bird. It resembles an ancient predator pulled directly from a nightmare. The Pokédex is remarkably consistent about its temperament. Aerodactyl was savage. It tore at prey with its fangs, flew through the air with terrifying speed, and treated the skies as its hunting ground. One entry says it was known as the King of the Skies in ancient times. Another explains that it has become even more vicious after mega evolution, hinting that the fossil restored by modern science may not perfectly represent the creature at its peak. That possibility makes Old Amber especially unsettling. Amber preserves small things in our world: insects, fragments of plants, tiny moments sealed away in golden resin. Yet this single piece contains enough genetic memory to reconstruct a massive flying predator. Whether it is truly ancient DNA, some supernatural imprint left within the resin, or technology beyond the understanding of the scientists using it, the result is the same. A creature that should belong only to deep time opens its eyes again in the modern world. And Aerodactyl is not merely a relic. Unlike the quiet Omanyte or the patient Kabuto, it carries the violence of its lost age with it. When it takes flight, the past is no longer buried beneath rock. It is screaming overhead. 300 million years is a number that is almost impossible to hold in your mind. It is a span of time so vast that it predates the first dinosaurs by nearly 100 million years. And yet, that is the age the Pokédex assigns to Kabuto, the ancient beach dweller whose dome-shaped shell has become one of the most recognizable fossil forms in the Pokémon world. But as we leave the shores of that primordial ocean behind, we must move forward in time, or rather, backward in the fossil record, to a creature that lived much closer to our own era. Though still impossibly distant, we are speaking of the Jurassic period, roughly 150 million years ago, and the creature that ruled the skies above the dinosaurs, Aerodactyl. To find Aerodactyl, we do not begin in a cave or a desert or a glacier. We begin in a museum, the Pewter Museum of Science to be precise. A quiet building nestled in the shadow of the rocky cliffs that surround the city of Pewter. It is a place of polished floors and glass cases, of educational displays and hushed voices. And in one of those cases, mounted on a simple stand, rests a small, unassuming piece of amber. It is not large. It is not particularly beautiful, but within that amber, suspended like a fly in honey, is a fragment of a feather, a piece of skin, a remnant of a wing. This is the Old Amber, and it is in its own quiet way a miniature version of Jurassic Park. The comparison is almost too perfect to ignore. In the novel and film, scientists extract dinosaurs' DNA from the stomachs of mosquitoes, preserved in amber, and then use that genetic material to resurrect creatures that have been extinct for tens of millions of years. The Old Amber works on the same principle, though the method in the Pokémon world is less about mosquitoes and more about a process called mineral infusion, a technique that uses the minerals in the fossil itself to reconstruct the creature's body, granting it the rock type in the process. But the result is the same: a living animal pulled from the deep past, brought into a world it does not recognize. And the creature that emerges from the Old Amber is unlike any other fossil Pokémon we have met so far. Omanyte and Kabuto are small-shelled and relatively passive. They are creatures of the seafloor, of the tide pools, of the slow and patient crawl across the sand. Aerodactyl is something else entirely. It is a flying reptile, a pterosaur, and its design draws directly from the real-world genus Pterodactylus, one of the first pterosaurs ever discovered and named. In popular culture, pterosaurs are often lumped together with dinosaurs. But this is a common misconception. Dinosaurs are a specific group of reptiles, characterized by their upright stance and hip structure. Pterosaurs are a separate branch of the reptile family tree, the first vertebrates to achieve powered flight. They are not dinosaurs, but they lived alongside them, soaring above the heads of the great sauropods and theropods, hunting fish and small prey from the air. Aerodactyl captures this distinction beautifully. Its body is built for flight, with a large membranous wing that stretches from its elongated fourth finger to its body. Its head is large and pointed, filled with sharp teeth, and its tail is stiff and diamond-shaped, used for stability in the air. But the Pokédex does not describe Aerodactyl as a gentle glider or a graceful hunter. Instead, it paints a picture of pure aggression. It is described as a violent Pokémon, a savage ancient predator that attacks anything that moves. Its Pokédex entries speak of its sharp saw-like fangs, its powerful jaws, and its tendency to let out a piercing shriek before it strikes. One entry from Pokémon Gold states that Aerodactyl was from a fossil found within amber, and that it is said to have been a very violent Pokémon in ancient times. Another, from Pokémon Heart Gold, describes it as a vicious Pokémon that attacks anything that moves, and that it is said to have been revived from a fossil found in amber. This reputation paints a picture of a creature that is not simply a relic of the past, but a predator that is deeply out of place in the modern world. It is a hunter that evolved in a time of giant insects, small mammals, and other reptiles, a world where aggression was a survival trait. But when it is revived, it finds itself in a world of trainers, of Pokeballs, of cities and technology. It does not understand this world. It only knows the instinct to hunt, to fight, to survive, and that instinct makes it dangerous, not just to its opponents, but to itself. The Pokédex entry from Pokémon Y describes Aerodactyl as a Pokémon that was resurrected from a fossil found in amber. It is said to have been a very violent Pokémon in ancient times, and that its aggressive nature has not changed even after being revived. But there is another layer to Aerodactyl's story, a mystery that lingered for years after its introduction in Generation 1. When players first encountered Aerodactyl in Pokémon Red and Blue, they saw a creature with a distinct appearance, a purple body, a long snout, and a pair of wings that seemed almost too large for its frame. But there was a question that many fans asked, a question that the games did not answer. What did Aerodactyl originally look like? The fossil in the amber was incomplete. The scientists at the Cinnabar lab had to reconstruct the creature from the genetic material they could extract, and that reconstruction, the Aerodactyl that players could revive and train, might not have been an accurate representation of the original animal. It was a best guess, a scientific approximation. This question lingered for over a decade until Generation 6 introduced a new mechanic, Mega Evolution, and with Mega Evolution came a new form for Aerodactyl, a form that answered that old question in a dramatic and unexpected way. Mega Aerodactyl is not simply a larger, stronger version of the original. It is a transformation that changes the creature's appearance in significant ways. Its body becomes covered in sharp, jagged rocks, as if the stone itself is breaking through the skin. Its wings become more tattered and ragged, and its jaws become even more pronounced, filled with even larger teeth. But the most striking change is in its colour. Mega Aerodactyl is not purple. It is a deep dark grey, almost black, with red eyes that glow with an inner fire. This transformation suggests that the original Aerodactyl, the creature that lived in the Jurassic period, might have looked very different from the one in the games. The rocks that cover Mega Aerodactyl's body are not simply decorative. They are a sign that the creature is drawing on the mineral infusion that brought it to life, that it is tapping into the very stone that formed its fossil. In a way, Mega Aerodactyl is a more complete version of the original, a form that reveals what the creature might have looked like before it was fossilized, before the amber preserved only a fragment of its existence. It is a glimpse into the past, a window into a world that we can only imagine. And so, Aerodactyl stands as a unique figure among the fossil Pokémon. It is not a creature of the sea, like Omanyte and Kabuto. It is not a creature of the land, like the dinosaurs that would come in later generations. It is a creature of the sky, a predator that ruled the air above the heads of the giants below. And it is a creature of mystery, a puzzle that was only partially solved by the scientists who revived it. A question that was only fully answered when the power of mega evolution unlocked a deeper layer of its biology. It is a beast in amber, a fragment of a lost world, brought back to life in a world that is no longer its own. But the fossil record does not end with the Jurassic. There are more creatures buried in the earth, more fragments of the past, waiting to be unearthed. And as we move forward in time, we will find that the next chapter in the story of fossil Pokémon takes us to a different kind of ancient world, a world of shallow seas and strange plant-like creatures that lived long before the first pterosaur ever took to the air. The amber gave up its secret on a laboratory table. The blood cell within it decoded and rebuilt into a living creature that had not drawn breath since the Jurassic. But that table sat somewhere specific. That machine lived in a particular room, on an island that was itself a kind of fossil, a volcanic remnant of the Earth's deep memory. The laboratory on Cinnabar Island is where the impossible became routine. It is the first place in all of Pokémon where a player watches extinction reverse itself. To reach Cinnabar, you cross the sea from the southern coast of Kanto. The island rises from the water as a single dark peak, its slopes hardened by ancient eruptions. The air smells of brine and sulfur, of geothermal heat leaking through the crust. There is a gym here, buried inside the volcano itself, a furnace of fire-type energy. But the heart of the island sits closer to the shore, a plain building with a sign that reads simply Pokémon Lab. It does not look like a cathedral of resurrection. It looks like a repurposed research facility, the kind of place where scientists study electricity or marine biology. But what happens inside is nothing short of a quiet miracle. Players who made the journey in the original games had already carried their fossils through the depths of Moon, had chosen between the helix and the dome, had slipped the old amber into their pocket like a smooth stone from a museum gift shop. But the actual revival, the moment of transition from inert mineral to living creature, happens only here. It is the very first time in the entire franchise that a being from the prehistoric world is dragged back into the present, and the process itself is treated with the most remarkable simplicity. You hand the fossil to the scientist. They take it without ceremony. They walk to a machine built into the wall, a device of glass tubes and metallic plates that looks like something between an X-ray scanner and a fish tank. The fossil goes into a compartment. The machine hums. Lights flicker. A shape begins to form inside a chamber, suspended in a solution of minerals and energy. And then the chamber opens. Water drains away. An ancient creature blinks in the sterile light of the laboratory and takes its first step into a world that has changed beyond its understanding. The games never bog this moment down in technobabble. There is no long explanation about genetic repair or cellular scaffolding. The fossil just goes in the machine, and a living Pokémon comes out. It is a fairy tale dressed in a lab coat, a myth that happens to run on electricity. One stone enters, and a 300-million-year-old animal walks out, as if death itself was just a long, quiet nap. There is a profound weight hidden in this simplicity. In the real world, the resurrection of extinct species is a subject of immense ethical debate, of legal frameworks and philosophical hand-wringing. No one has ever agreed on whether we should bring back the passenger pigeon or the woolly mammoth, because no one can agree on who has the right to make that choice. In Pokémon, the question is never asked. The machine simply hums. The creature steps forward, and the game moves on. This is the ethical tension buried so deep beneath the cheerful presentation that most players never stop to feel it. No revived Pokémon can consent to returning. The Omanyte that curls its tentacles around a Pokéball has no memory of the ancient sea that once filled its shell. The Kabuto that blinks under fluorescent light does not know where it is. The Aerodactyl that screams a cry, heard by no living human, carries instincts for a world that no longer exists. They are plucked from the void of deep time and dropped into a reality of trainer battles, experience points, and human command. The game never gives them a moment to adjust. It cannot. There is no dialogue box for existential confusion. The creature simply obeys, its ancient instincts submerged beneath a layer of new programming. And despite all of that weight, the laboratory on Cinnabar Island made resurrection feel ordinary. It normalized the impossible. Before the franchise ever questioned the morality of its own technology, before later generations built machines that struggled to piece together mismatched fossils, before fans ever debated the ethics of tearing a creature from its own extinction, the Kanto lab just did it, quietly, smoothly, as if reviving a dinosaur was not that different from healing a scratch. The scientist does not give a speech. There is no fanfare. The machine hums its note, the creature materializes, and you are free to walk out the door with a ghost at your side. The rest of the world would spend decades catching up to the questions that Cinnabar Island simply ignored. Hoenn would uncover fossils from a desert that was once an ocean floor. Sinnoh would dig up Pokémon from deep within mountain rock. Unova would hand you a fossil from the relic castle as if it was too heavy for the backpacker who found it. Kalos would introduce the first true dinosaurs, Theropod and Sauropod, pulled from the glittering cave, and Galar would push the machine to its breaking point, forcing scientists to stitch together mismatched bodies from fragments that could no longer be identified. Every single one of those later revivals traces its lineage back to this single volcanic island. But here in Kanto there was no moralizing, no ethical committees, no warnings about playing God, just a scientist, a machine, and a creature that should not exist. The games invited us to imagine a world where the boundary between past and present was soft, where a child could hold a piece of deep time in their hand, and with a little help from a quiet room on a sleepy island, shake hands with a ghost. The ghost walks alongside you now. Omanyte curls its tentacles around a Pokeball. Kabuto unfolds its eyes to the sunlight. Aerodactyl screams a cry that echoes off the lab walls, a sound that no one on Earth has heard for 150 million years, and the scientist simply nods, satisfied with the work. The machine powers down. The ordinary miracle is complete. We left the revival machine on Cinnabar Island, knowing it could bring the dead back to life, but that miracle was confined to one small laboratory in Kanto. When the journey continued into Johto, the climate of discovery changed entirely. Generation 2 arrived with a focus on time itself, on breeding, on the bonds between legend and land, but it brought no new fossil Pokémon whatsoever. This absence was not a simple oversight. Johto is the most historically dense region we had seen. It contains the Brass Tower, burned to ash and reborn. It contains the Tin Tower, where ancient birds once descended from the sky. If any region should have unearthed a new set of fossils to revive, it was Johto. Instead, it gave us the ruins of Alph. The ruins of Alph are a complex of underground chambers hidden beneath the earth just outside Violet City. Unlike the active dig site of Mount Moon or the sterile lab on Cinnabar, the ruins of Alph feel like a tomb in the truest sense of the word. The walls are covered in the shapes of the unknown, Pokémon that exist as pure written language. The music that plays here is slow and meditative, a quiet hum that discourages haste. The puzzles require the player to arrange stone panels in specific sequences, opening doorways into chambers that each hold a different connection to the past. Inside the main chamber, a scientist stands studying the inscriptions. He offers the player a piece of information that should be simple, but instead changes the entire context of what we thought we knew. He states that ancient Pokémon first appeared on the planet only 2 million years ago. It is not a theory he presents, it is a statement of fact, delivered with the full confidence of someone who has decoded the walls around him. 2 million years. The number sits in direct opposition to everything we learned in Kanto. The Kabuto fossil, the dome fossil we carried from Mount Moon revived on Cinnabar Island, was given a specific age in its very first Pokédex entry. Kabuto inhabited warm beaches 300 million years ago. Distance between 2 million and 300 million is not a minor discrepancy. It is a fundamental fracture in the timeline. Which source do we trust? The fossil in our bag that gives us a specific number, or the scholar standing in a ruin that predates recorded history? The games never force a resolution. There is no hidden quest to reconcile the contradiction. The two facts simply sit in the game files, layered on top of each other, like different geological strata. One rock says 300 million, one scholar says 2 million. The truth is somewhere in the middle, buried between the lines. This unresolved conflict is the true legacy of Johto's fossil silence. It was not a failure of imagination that left Generation 2 without a new creature to revive. It was a deliberate expansion of the question. The fossil record is not a simple straight line. It is a puzzle with missing pieces. Perhaps the scientist is measuring the age of Pokémon civilization rather than the age of Pokémon life. Perhaps the unknown existed first as pure thought, and the organisms we call prehistoric Pokémon came later. Perhaps the Kabuto on the wall of the ruins of Alph is 2 million years old, but the Kabuto in the fossil is far older. Preserved in stone before the walls were ever built. We are never told. We are only left to wonder. The journey through Johto ends not with a new fossil in the bag, but with a mystery in the mind. The machine on Cinnabar gave us the means of revival. The ruins of Alph gave us the depth of time. The next expansion of the Pokémon world would take this question and bury it once more, not in an ancient temple, but under a vast desert that was once the floor of an ancient ocean. The excavation was about to begin again, with a shovel instead of a machine, seeking answers in the sand. Hoenn's Great Desert, Route 111, spreads across the region like a dried wound. Once this entire landscape was submerged beneath an ancient. If Johto held its secrets close, Hoenn buried them in sand. The silence of the ruins of Alph was not the end of the fossil story. It was simply a pause, and when the narrative began again, it did so on a very different kind of landscape. Route 111 is a desert, a long stretch of shifting sand that cuts through the interior of the Hoenn region, but it was not always dry. Geologists in the Pokémon world have pieced together a surprising truth about this location. The ground beneath the dunes was once the floor of a sea, a shallow ocean basin that teemed with marine life millions of years ago. The water eventually receded, the climate shifted, and what was once a vibrant underwater ecosystem became a vast sun-baked expanse of sand. The evidence for this transformation is buried directly in the desert. Here you can find the root fossil and the claw fossil. These are not the remains of terrestrial dinosaurs or flying reptiles. They are the preserved bodies of creatures that lived in a world of water. The root fossil contains Lileep. In the real world, its inspiration is the crinoid, commonly known as the sea lily. These ancient animals anchored themselves to the seafloor with a stalk, their feathery arms reaching out to filter plankton from the passing currents. They looked more like plants than animals. A common confusion in the ancient oceans. Lileep is a patient hunter. It waits for prey to come to it, blending into the underwater landscape. Revived from its fossil, it carries the memory of a slow, gentle world. The claw fossil contains Anorith. Its real-world counterpart is Anomalocaris, one of the great apex predators of the Cambrian period. This was an era over 500 million years ago, long before the dinosaurs. Anomalocaris was a swimming terror. It used flexible flaps along its body to propel itself through the water, and it possessed a pair of spiny appendages for grasping prey. Its mouth was a circular ring of sharp plates, unlike almost anything alive today. Anorith, revived from its fossil, remembers a world of speed and predation. Finding these marine creatures in a desert is the narrative twist at the heart of Hoenn's fossil lore. It is a lesson in deep time. Landscapes are not permanent. Oceans can vanish. Deserts can form. And the fossil record preserves the evidence of this transformation. The sand cannot hide its past forever. by introducing Lileep and Anorith. Hoenn expanded the definition of what a fossil Pokémon could be. Kanto gave us the Jurassic and the Cretaceous. It gave us shells, wings, and armoured backs. Hoenn reached back further into the past, into the Paleozoic era, when life was older and stranger. It showed that the world of Pokémon fossils was not limited to the time of the dinosaurs. It stretched back into the very dawn of complex animal life. When you cross the shifting sands of Route 111, you are walking on the memory of an ocean. And when you choose between the root fossil and the claw fossil, you are deciding which part of that memory to bring back to life. Do you restore the gentle filter feeder, the stillness of the ancient seabed, or the swift predator, the sharp edge of evolution's first great experiments? Standing in the dry heat of the Hoenn Desert, holding a fossil that once rested at the bottom of a sea, leaves you with a quiet sense of wonder. The world is older than it seems. The ground beneath your feet has lived many lives, and the fossils of Hoenn proved that this history was far deeper and far stranger than the Kanto region had ever let on. The fossil record of the Pokémon world was still being written, one buried claw and root at a time, and with every new generation, the story would push deeper into the past. That next descent would lead to Sinnoh, a region shaped by mountains, myths, and the crushing weight of ancient stone. Beneath its surface lay fossils from an age when colossal creatures ruled the land, their bones sealed away in layers of rock beneath the earth. In the Auberg Mining Museum, 2 more fragments of prehistory waited to be restored. The skull fossil carried Cranidos, a fierce creature built for impact, while the armor fossil held Shieldon, protected by a face like a living fortress. Hoenn had revealed the strange life of vanished seas. Sinnoh would return the story to the land, but it would do so with creatures whose bodies showed evolution taking entirely different paths. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. The desert of Hoenn's Route 111 is a landscape of stark contradiction. It is a place of burning sun and dry, shifting sand, yet the fossils embedded within its deepest strata are entirely aquatic. They are evidence that this desert was once an ocean basin, quiet sea that supported a diverse ecosystem of prehistoric life. The trainers who explore this desert often find 2 specific fossils, pulled from the same ancient layer. The first is the root fossil. Revived from the root fossil, a creature emerges that embodies the very nature of patience. This is Lileep. Lileep is a tentacled fossil, and its design is drawn directly from the crinoids, commonly known as sea lilies of the real world. These are not plants. They are stalked echinoderms, relatives of starfish and sea urchins that have existed on Earth for over 450 million years. They once carpeted entire seafloors in deep time. Lileep takes this ancient blueprint and gives it a distinctively carnivorous purpose. Its body is a slender pink stalk, tipped with a cluster of 8 tentacles arranged in a ring. It looks like a flower. This is the foundation of its survival. The flower-like silhouette is a deception. Those tentacles are packed with suction cups and lined with incredible gripping strength. In the wild, Lileep would attach itself firmly to a rock on the seafloor, swaying gently with the prehistoric currents, and wait. It is built entirely to cling, to feed, and to survive. When unsuspecting prey swims close, mistaking it for a harmless bit of coral or an anemone, those tentacles snap out. They are not fast in the way a fish is fast, but they are relentless. Once they latch on, the grip is nearly impossible to break. The prey is drawn toward the waiting mouth at the center of the flower. Lileep is a trap disguised as a bloom. As Lileep matures and evolves, it transforms into Cradily. This evolution represents a profound shift in scale and strategy. The slender stalk becomes a thick, muscular trunk. The 8 tentacles multiply and expand into a dense ring of yellow and pink appendages surrounding a deep, dark maw. The The stem anchors itself deeply into the seafloor. Where Lileep is a trap, Cradily is a territory. A group of Cradily would transform the seafloor into a living forest, a forest of rooted, breathing predators. It does not chase its food. It makes the ocean floor itself the hunting ground. And this is where the design of Cradily reveals its most unsettling aspect. Multiple generations of Pokédex entries confirm that Cradily does not simply wait for prey to stumble into it. It actively lures them in by standing perfectly still and presenting its large, flower-like head. It invites the approach of smaller marine life. It weaponizes the appearance of safety. In the ocean, a patch of flowers or seaweed often represents shelter. Cradily exploits this expectation completely. The Pokédex for Pokémon Pearl states it plainly. It lures prey close with its appearance. It does not hunt, it seduces. The calm appearance of harmless plant life becomes its primary weapon. Prey swims toward it, seeking a haven, and finds themselves wrapped in a constrictive grasp from which there is no escape. The heart of this garden is a predator. The rock typing of this line of Pokémon feels particularly fitting. The mineral infusion process that revives them grants them this type, but in Lileep and Cradily, the rock does not feel added. It feels essential. Their stems resemble the fossilized stalk segments that paleontologists find scattered in limestone deposits. They are creatures that bridge the gap between living tissue and ancient stone. The official heights place Lileep at just over 3 feet tall and Cradily at just under 5 feet. They are not towering monsters, but their presence in a habitat would be inescapable. A seafloor populated by Cradily would be a quiet place, a garden of patience, where the only movement was the sway of the stalk and the closing of a trap. Compared to the other fossil Pokémon of the Hoenn region, they represent the absolute extreme of passive predation. They are a shadow of the Paleozoic seas, a time before the swift-jawed hunters fully dominated the water column. They are a reminder that survival does not always mean speed. Sometimes it means stillness. Sometimes it means looking exactly like the safest thing in the water, so your prey makes the fatal decision to come closer. The root fossil tells one story of the lost Hoenn Sea. It tells a story of a seafloor ruled by patience and deception, a garden of stone lilies that held their hunger in check. But the desert of Route 111 held a second story. A second fossil was pulled from the same ancient basin. This fossil does not speak of stillness at all. It speaks of speed. It speaks of eyes that hunted the open water. The claw fossil, found beside the root, holds the legacy of a predator built for an entirely different kind of pursuit. The root fossil gave us Lileep and Cradily, creatures of the stalk and the stem, anchored to a seabed that was still learning to host complex life. They represent an ancient and patient ecology, a world where survival meant holding still and waiting for the current to bring food within reach. But the claw fossil, lying beside it in the dust of Route 111, belongs to a different kind of inhabitant of that vanished sea. It belongs to a hunter, and the world this hunter comes from is even older, stranger, and more alien than anything the sea lilies ever knew. It is a world defined by the Cambrian explosion. The Cambrian explosion is one of the most remarkable events in the entire history of life on Earth. Over a relatively short geological window, roughly spanning from 541 to 530 million years ago, the ancestors of almost every major animal group alive today suddenly appeared in the fossil record. But they did not appear as we know them. They appeared in forms that were wildly experimental, stranger than any fantasy. If you could travel back in time to the Cambrian period, you would not recognize the planet as Earth. The continents were barren. The atmosphere held different levels of oxygen, and the life forms themselves were so alien that when paleontologists first unearthed them from the Burgess Shale, they debated whether they were animals, plants, or something entirely new to science. There was Opabenia, a soft-bodied swimmer with 5 eyes and a frontal claw. There was Hallucigenia, a walking worm armoured in spines, so bizarre that scientists originally argued over which direction it faced. There was Waiwaxia, covered in overlapping scales and defensive spikes, and there was Anomalocaris, the terror of the Cambrian seas, an animal that looked like a cross between a shrimp, a squid, and a nightmare. It propelled itself through the water with undulating fins and seized prey with a pair of spiny appendages that unfolded from its face. Anorith is a direct homage to this creature. Its design echoes the segmented body, the large stalked eyes, and the grasping claws of Anomalocaris, scaled down into a smaller, more primitive form. Anomalocaris itself was a puzzle for generations of scientists. Its mouth was originally mistaken for a jellyfish. Its grasping claws were thought to be separate shrimp-like creatures. It took years of careful study to reveal the truth that the predator was a single, unified animal, a testament to the strange directions evolution was exploring at the dawn of complex life. Anorith carries this otherness with it. It is not just ancient, it is fundamentally distinct from any creature today. In the Pokémon world, Anorith is the claw fossil, revived from a creature that lived over 500 million years ago, placing it among the very oldest fossil Pokémon in terms of the real-world timeline it represents. When Anorith evolves into Armaldo at level 40, the transformation is profound, where Anorith is small and Narplius-like, a larval hunter picking its way through the primordial ooze. Armaldo becomes a towering, heavily armoured apex predator. Its shell gains the armoured plates of a walking fortress, a cruiser built to dominate its environment. Its claws transform from simple grasping appendages to the curved, serrated scythes of a born hunter. The Pokédex entries emphasize its role in this vanished world. In Pokémon Ruby, it is described as a Pokémon that lived on the seashore and preyed on other ancient creatures. In Sapphire, its armor is said to be as hard as steel, and its claws can crush stone. The dual typing of bug and rock perfectly encapsulates its identity. It is an arthropod, the dominant phylum of the Cambrian, encased in the geological permanence of stone. It is a creature trapped between two worlds, the biological drive of an insect and the ancient inertia of a fossil given form. And it is the age of this creature that truly staggers the imagination. We have discussed the age of dinosaurs. Aerodactyl lived about 150 million years ago. Tyrantrum lived about 66 million years ago. But Anorith and Armaldo come from a world that is not tens of millions, but hundreds of millions of years older than the oldest dinosaurs. The Cambrian period ended roughly 485 million years ago. The first dinosaurs did not appear until the Triassic period, over 250 million years later. To put it bluntly, the gap in time between Armaldo and Tyrantrum is almost twice as long as the gap between Tyrantrum and the present day. When Armaldo prowled the ancient seas, the very continents were barren landscapes of rock and microbial mats. There were no trees, no flowers, no insects on land, no vertebrate animals of any kind. The entire drama of complex animal life was confined entirely to the water. It is a time so remote it feels like another planet, and in many ways it was. The Hoenn region itself holds the key to this understanding. Route 111 is a harsh, dusty stretch of land, a desert where few Pokémon thrive under the midday sun. But buried beneath the surface, hidden in the Mirage Tower that rises abruptly from the dunes, are fossils that tell a completely different story. The claw fossil and the root fossil offer proof that this barren landscape was once a thriving seabed. Imagine standing on that ancient shore 500 million years ago. The water is warm and shallow. The sun filters down through a greenish sea, and crawling along the bottom, weaving through the algal mats and the stalks of ancient sea lilies, is a small, shrimp-like creature with large eyes and grasping claws. This is Anorith in its native environment, a tiny predator in a world of giants, hunting smaller prey, scavenging the remains of dead trilobites, and trying its best not to become a meal for the larger Anomalocaris that ruled the open water. But in the Pokémon world, Anorith does not remain a footnote in the food chain. Through evolution, it claims its place at the top. Armaldo is the fully realized adult form, a walking tank that patrols the seafloor with a confidence that no creature in its time could challenge. And yet this niche could not last forever. The Cambrian seas eventually gave way to the Ordovician and the Silurian. New predators evolved. The oxygen levels fluctuated. The ecosystems shifted. The niche that Armaldo filled closed up, and it faded into the fossil record, waiting hundreds of millions of years for a scientist in Hoenn to dig up its claw and bring it back into the light. The legacy of the Cambrian did not disappear overnight. It slowly transformed. The strange experimental body plans of the Cambrian gave way to more familiar shapes in the oceans that followed. New kinds of arthropods rose to prominence. The first fish began to appear, carrying the blueprint for all vertebrate life that would eventually walk onto land. The fossil record continued its slow, relentless march toward the present. Anorith and Armaldo stand at the very roots of this journey, a reminder of a time when life was still deciding what it wanted to become. They are echoes of an explosion that set the stage for everything that followed. From this primordial world, the story of the fossil Pokémon moves forward, following the currents of time into seas that were beginning to look just a little more like our own. The Cambrian world, as we saw with Anorith and Armaldo, was a garden of bizarre alien forms. Bodies built for a world without jaws, without predators that could chase. But the Cambrian gave way to the Ordovician, the Devonian, and eventually the Mesozoic. Life hardened, life armoured, life began to fight in earnest. And if you wanted to find the relics of those later, more competitive eras, you had to travel to a region built on conflict itself. You had to go to Sinnoh. Sinnoh is a land defined by extremes. Mountains scraped raw by ancient glaciers, forests that never seem to thaw, and an underground network of tunnels that stretches for miles beneath the surface. In previous regions, finding a fossil often meant stumbling across it on a cliffside or receiving it as a gift. But in Sinnoh, fossil hunting becomes tied to a much more deliberate act. You become the excavator, you equip a kit, you descend into the underground, and you start to dig. It is patient labour. You have to listen for the sound of a wall that hides a secret, brush away the dirt, and uncover the fossilised remains of a lost age. This isn't a gift. It's a reward for persistence, for getting your hands dirty. It transforms the player from a simple adventurer into an active paleontologist, sifting through the bedrock of Sinnoh for a piece of its violent past. And what the underground yields are two relics that revive two dramatically different dinosaurs. The skull fossil, which becomes Cranidos, and the armor fossil, which becomes Shieldon. These are not the first dinosaurs in the Pokémon world. Aerodactyl predates them by a wide margin, but they are the first true land-based dinosaurs the franchise had ever introduced, arriving almost a decade after the very first generation. Cranidos is a tiny terror, a bipedal dinosaur with a skull so thick it can shatter rock. It is built to charge, to lunge, to put all of its momentum into a single devastating headbutt. Its real-world counterparts draw from the pachycephalosaurs, the dome-headed dinosaurs that likely competed for mates and territory by ramming each other at full speed. Shieldon, on the other hand, is a different creature entirely. It is small, quadrupedal and armoured. Its face is a flat bony shield. Its back is plated. It embodies the philosophy of endurance. It is not meant to strike, it is meant to be struck. The two fossils frame a prehistoric rivalry as old as combat itself. One built to strike with its head, the other built to endure every attack. Cranidos and Shieldon represent two completely different evolutionary strategies that would have coexisted in the same ancient Sinnoh. Cranidos relied on speed and aggression, using its dense skull as a battering ram to shatter the defences of anything in its path. Shieldon relied on patience and fortitude, lowering its face to weather the assault before countering with a power of its own. If you encountered one in the wild, you would know exactly what the other was designed to overcome. They are matched opponents, designed by nature to test each other. But whether you uncover one or the other, depends entirely on which version of the game you are holding. In Pokémon Diamond, the skull fossil is more common. In Pokémon Pearl, the armor fossil is easier to find beneath the soil. This is a subtle narrative choice. It suggests that history itself is not fixed. The fossil record is a matter of chance, of geography, of which bedrock you happen to be standing on. Your version of Sinnoh preserves a slightly different chapter of the same ancient story. The player's version determines which relic is easier to uncover, making history feel shaped by geography and chance rather than by a predetermined script. Let us look closer at what these creatures became. Cranidos evolves into Rampardos, a Pokémon that takes the headbutting strategy to its absolute extreme. Its Pokédex entries describe it as having a skull as hard as steel, capable of toppling skyscrapers with a single charge. But this extreme specialization came at a cost. Its brain is remarkably small for its body size. It is an ancient brawler, a creature of pure offense that cared very little for defense or strategy beyond overwhelming its opponent. Shieldon evolves into Bastiodon, and its transformation is equally dramatic. Bastiodon's face becomes an immense, towering shield, anchoring its body to the ground. Its Pokédex entries boast that no attack can penetrate its face, but likewise, its offensive capabilities are heavily limited. It is a living fortress. One is the hammer, the other is the anvil. These fossils feel perfectly at home in Sinnoh. This is a region whose mythology is obsessed with the creation of the universe, with time, space, and the ancient forces that shaped the land. The very ground beneath your feet is unstable, shaped by tectonic forces and meteors from space. The fossils you dig up are artifacts not just of life, but of this world's geological violence. Rampardos rammed through stone walls. Bastiodon weathered the onslaught. They are creatures of a brutal, survival of the fittest Sinnoh that existed long before humans ever troubled its surface. The act of digging for them in the underground mirrors the act of uncovering Sinnoh's own deep history. Layer by patient layer, the fossils of Sinnoh demanded labour. You were the one digging, hand-selecting the dirt. The next land would offer its fossils in a different way. A stranger in a desert, a bag full of mysteries. But for now, the story of Sinnoh is the story of the brawler and the fortress, Rampardos and Bastiodon, a perfect prehistoric rivalry, one built to strike with its head, the other built to endure every attack. The tunnels of Sinnoh stretch deep beneath the surface, holding secrets buried with prehistoric patience. The labour of excavation in the Sinnoh underground can yield two specific fossils, the armour fossil and the skull fossil. One revives a creature built for total defense, a living fortress. The other resurrects something almost entirely opposite. Meet Cranidos. It is a dome-headed dinosaur Pokémon whose entire design centers on force, momentum, and impact. Its body is compact, built low to the ground, serving mostly as an anchor for the weaponized weight of its skull. This is a creature purpose, built for charging. This design connects directly to the real pachycephalosaurs, the thick-headed lizards of the Mesozoic. Their headbutting behavior remains a subject of genuine debate among paleontologists. Some biomechanical studies suggest the domes were strong enough for full-force collisions. Other evidence hints that the structure served more for display or flank butting to avoid the stresses of a direct frontal impact. Cranidos simply takes the most aggressive interpretation of that anatomy and embodies it completely. Evolve Cranidos into Rampardos, and the commitment to the headlong charge becomes absolute. Its massive skull turns prehistoric competition into a simple equation of overwhelming brute strength. In the games, it possesses a base attack stat of 165, a figure so high that placed it among the very highest of all non-legendary Pokémon for its generation. It can shatter boulders and ancient defenses with a single strike. This is a recurring fossil Pokémon theme. Ancient power almost always comes with a significant cost, especially in defense and survival. Rampardos is the ultimate glass cannon. It has the raw firepower to knock out almost any opponent in a single hit, but it simply cannot take a hit in return. Its defensive stats are frighteningly low. Its speed is not quite fast enough to guarantee it strikes first. If that first devastating blow fails, the cost is immediate. This fragility is the price of its power. It was designed to win instantly or not at all. The skull fossil gives us a creature of pure offense, a headlong charger that lives and dies by the impact of its initial strike. But the armor fossil, found in the same dark tunnels of Sinnoh, offers a completely different solution to the same ancient problem. It is a creature designed not to strike first, but to endure. Meet Shieldon. Its face is protected by a broad, iron-hard shield, giving it the appearance of a living castle gate. Where Cranidos turns its skull into a battering ram, Shieldon uses its head as a wall. Its fossilized design draws from ceratopsian dinosaurs, especially the heavily armored species that carried thick skulls, protective frills, and sturdy bodies through dangerous prehistoric ecosystems. When Shieldon evolves into Bastiodon, that defensive idea becomes enormous. Its face expands into a flat, fortress-like barrier, while its body becomes a heavy foundation built to absorb punishment. Bastiodon is not interested in chasing down opponents or landing a quick knockout. It wants to stand in place, deny progress, and outlast everything thrown against it. Its rock and steel typing gives it an extraordinary list of resistances. Many attacks that would threaten other rock types barely scratch Bastiodon. Its defense and special defense are both extremely high, making it one of the most durable fossil Pokémon ever introduced. But that resilience comes with obvious weaknesses. Ground and fighting attacks exploit its structure brutally, and its low speed means it almost always moves after the opponent. That contrast is what makes the Sinnoh fossils so memorable. Cranidos and Rampardos represent the moment of impact. Shieldon and Bastiodon represent the refusal to break. One fossil remembers an ancient animal surviving by smashing through obstacles. The other remembers one surviving by becoming an obstacle too solid to overcome. Rampardos was a creature defined by impact. Its entire body was built to deliver a single devastating blow. But the ancient world also produced a very different kind of survivor. While the skull fossil yielded a headlong attacker, the armor fossil found in the same Sinnoh underground cradled a creature whose entire design was centered on withstanding that same force. This was Shieldon, a small dinosaur whose face was formed into a perfect ancient shield. It was not built to break bones. It was built to be unbreakable. To understand Shieldon, we have to look toward the ceratopsian dinosaurs. This is the family that includes Triceratops and its smaller ancestors. What made them instantly recognizable in the fossil record was their remarkable frill. That sheet of bone extended from the back of the skull, acting as a shield, a display structure, and a powerful anchor for jaw muscles. Shieldon takes this defining feature and simplifies it. The entire front of its face becomes the frill, turning the dinosaur into a literal living shield. In its earliest form, Shieldon is small and somewhat vulnerable, but its face already promises the defensive powerhouse it will become. As Shieldon evolved, that promise was fully realized. Bastiodon is no longer just a dinosaur with a shield on its face. It becomes the fortress itself. Its head lowers to the ground, transforming into a massive rampart of stone and steel. The Pokédex describes it as an impenetrable wall, and its lore speaks of herds of Bastiodon standing shoulder to shoulder, creating an immovable barrier of faces. Nothing could pass through a line of Bastiodon. They did not need to attack. They simply existed as an unbreakable endpoint to any charge or any assault. It is the ultimate expression of passive defense, a creature that wins battles by simply refusing to lose them. And this brings us to the core of what makes these two Sinnoh fossils so fascinating. Rampardos and Bastiodon are direct opposites. They are two answers to the exact same prehistoric equation. Rampardos chose the headlong charge, sacrificing everything for maximum damage. It is the glass cannon, the hitter. Bastiodon chose the headlong wall. It sacrificed defense for absolute endurance. It is the immovable object. In gameplay, this contrast is stark. One is a sweeper, the other a wall. One represents the philosophy of attack as the best defense. The other represents the philosophy that a good defense is the ultimate victory. This contrast mirrors the real world, where paleontologists see that evolution constantly experiments with opposite strategies to solve the same survival problems. Their shared origin in the rock of Sinnoh makes them perfect bookends of a single dynamic. But the fossil record is a library, not just a single book. As we move away from the striking contrast of offense and defense embodied by the dinosaurs of Sinnoh, the fossils of other regions begin to whisper their own secrets. The world of ancient Pokémon is vast, and the stories locked in stone stretch back to the very dawn of complex life. Each fossil tells us something new about the path of evolution, the shape of survival, and the incredible diversity that the ancient world had to offer. Among the most revealing of these ancient creatures are the fossils discovered in Unova. The plume fossil revives into Archen, a small feathered Pokémon that carries one of the most important clues in all of paleontology. For a long time, dinosaurs and birds were imagined as completely separate kinds of animals. But fossils changed that picture forever. The discovery of feathered dinosaurs showed that birds were not distant outsiders. They were living dinosaurs, the descendants of ancient theropods that survived when so many others disappeared. Archen captures that extraordinary transition. It has claws, teeth, a long tail, and the body plan of a small predator. Yet it is covered in feathers and possesses wings. It is not simply a bird, and it is not simply a dinosaur. It represents the uncertain middle ground, where evolution was experimenting with flight. Its wings may not have carried it gracefully through the sky at first. They may have helped it leap, glide, balance, display, or chase prey through dense ancient forests. When Archen evolves into Archeops, that potential becomes something far more dramatic. Archeops is often described as one of the earliest bird Pokémon, but it still looks wild and primitive compared to modern flying types. Its colourful feathers, toothy beak, and powerful talons make it feel like a creature caught between two worlds. It reminds us that evolution rarely moves in neat, simple steps. New adaptations do not appear fully perfected. They emerge through countless imperfect forms, each one surviving well enough to pass its traits forward. The cover fossil tells a different story from the same ancient era. It restores Tirtouga, a small sea turtle whose ancestry reaches back to the time when reptiles ruled both land and ocean. Tirtouga is protected by a hard shell, but unlike the defensive wall of Bastiodon, its armour is part of a life spent moving through water. Its flippers and streamlined shape reveal an animal adapted for ancient coastlines, shallow seas, and dangerous currents. Its evolution, Carracosta, becomes a massive marine reptile built for power, with crushing jaws and a shell hard enough to endure enormous pressure. Carracosta was not merely surviving beneath the waves, it was hunting there. Its existence reflects another truth of prehistory. The oceans were never quiet background spaces beneath the age of dinosaurs. They were their own vast battlegrounds, filled with armoured swimmers, giant predators, and lineages that had adapted to life in water in astonishingly different ways. The creatures we uncovered in Sinnoh wore their history on their faces. Bony shields, thickened skulls, weapons designed for a world that demanded constant confrontation. But the fossils of Unova abandoned that fortress entirely. They would not be found in the crisp bedrock of an underground cavern. They would instead wash up in the heat of a sun-baked desert, buried beneath shifting sands that has swallowed an entire kingdom. To reach these relics, you must cross the desert resort, a vast field of sand and dust that hides the entrance to a crumbling structure known as the Relic Castle. This is a labyrinth of collapsing floors, sinking staircases, and quicksand that can swallow the unprepared. The atmosphere here is not of a scientific dig site, but of a lost age. The game does not tell you whose castle this was, only that it was built by an ancient civilization and then abandoned to the earth. It is the perfect tomb for things that have been purposely forgotten. Deeper inside this maze, the player does not excavate. Instead, they encounter a traveller who claims the items they found are simply too heavy to carry any further. They ask if you want them, and just like that, the cover fossil or the plume fossil enters your inventory. It is the most casual handoff of an ancient relic in the entire franchise. No dramatic discovery, no scientist identifying the bone structure, just a transaction between strangers in the dark. This lack of ceremony is deeply intentional. The origins of these fossils are treated as mysterious, even within a world that has long since accepted the revival process. By the time of Black and White, the fossil mechanic was a staple. Players had revived sea creatures, flying reptiles and armoured dinosaurs. But the plume fossil and the cover fossil feel like found objects, not scientific specimens. Their backstory is a gap in the record. Tirtouga, from the cover fossil, is an ancient turtle said to have lived in the sea, roughly 100 million years ago, but its existence feels contained. Archen from the plume fossil is different. Archen is explicitly stated to be the ancestor of all bird Pokémon. This is a massive claim. It connects every feathered creature in the modern world directly to this single fossil species. Archen is inspired by Archaeopteryx, the real-world fossil that sits at the very boundary between dinosaurs and birds. It had wings, but it could not fly well. It had feathers, but it also had teeth and a long bony tail. Unova's fossils push the series toward a bigger question about birds, reptiles, and evolutionary ancestry. Archen is a rock and flying type. The revival process anchors it to the earth, even as it strains for the sky. Its evolution, Archeops, is a towering feathered predator whose ability, Defeatist, cuts its stats in half when its health drops low. This is a mechanical representation of a lineage pushed to its limits. The first birds were not effortless flyers. They were desperate experiments made of bone and feather, trying to escape the grasp of the earth. The questions posed in the relic castle do not fade with the desert wind. The idea of an ancestor, a missing link preserved in stone, changes the way the fossil mechanic feels. These are not just curiosities revived for battle. They are the actual starting point of a dynasty that still fills the skies. The line between reptile and bird, between ancient stone and living feather, has never felt thinner. From these preserved feathers and ancient turtle shells, the fossil record would turn next towards something far more regal. The desire to find the true rulers of the ancient continent would pull explorers into a different kind of tomb, where the walls glittered and the bones of the earth yielded a creature that ruled with an iron jaw. That creature was Tyrant, restored from the jaw fossil in the Kalos region. Unlike the lost castle of Unova, Kalos preserves its prehistoric secrets with this glittering cave, a place where mineral-lined walls catch the light like buried stars. The setting feels almost ceremonial. Here, fossils are not handed over by a stranger or pulled from the sand. They are extracted from stone by an assistant to the region's professor, as though the past itself has been placed under official protection. Tyrant is based on Tyrannosaurus rex, one of the most famous predators ever to walk the real world. Its design is small at first, almost deceptively cute, but every detail points toward the monster it will become. Its oversized head, powerful jaws, and constant bad temper all suggest an animal born to dominate. When it evolves into Tyrantrum, that promise becomes impossible to ignore. Tyrantrum is not merely large, it is described as the ancient world's king, a Pokémon capable of crushing enemies beneath its feet and tearing through anything foolish enough to challenge it. The rock and dragon typing makes that royal image even stronger. Rock connects it to the fossilized remains pulled from the cave, while dragon elevates it beyond ordinary prehistoric life. Tyrantrum is not presented as a simple animal reconstructed from bone. It is a mythic memory of absolute power, a king whose reign was so complete that the world still remembers its name, long after its extinction. The cover fossil sits in the player's bag, a strangely dense stone handed over by a hiker who claimed it was just too heavy to keep carrying. He said he found it in the desert of Route 4, near the Relic Castle, a place of shifting sands and buried secrets. When this fossil is taken to the Nakreen City Museum, and put through the revival process. It does not become the skeleton of a lizard or the wing of a pterosaur. It becomes a turtle, a small, blue prehistoric turtle, its face covered by a smooth, mask-like shell, its limbs turned into flippers designed for pushing through water. Its name is Tirtouga. Tirtouga is a direct echo of some of the largest turtles that ever swam the ancient seas. Specifically, it recalls the enormous Protostega and Archelon, marine reptiles, whose shells stretched longer than a person is tall. Tirtouga itself is tiny in comparison, but the design language is unmistakable. It is a creature of the shallows, hunting with a patience that speaks to millions of years of evolution, waiting for prey to swim just a little bit too close. This places Tirtouga at the very end of the Cretaceous period, around 70 to 80 million years ago, a time when the planet belonged to giants. Mosasaurs pushed through the waves. Pterosaurs, with wingspans the length of a bus, soared overhead, and Tyrannosaurus walked the forests. The sea turtle survived in this extreme world through its heavy shell and its persistent, unhurried nature. Given enough time and experience, Tirtouga evolves into Carracosta. Carracosta is the fully realized armored hunter. Its shell becomes thicker, its flippers grow more powerful, built for deep explosive dives. Its jaws are described in its Pokédex entries as strong enough to crack boulders and attack ships. Carracosta is a swimming fortress, capable of launching itself through the water to smash into prey or predators. It is both a swimmer and an armoured tank, a perfect union of defence and aquatic power that allowed it to thrive at the top of the Cretaceous food chain. There is a soothing paradox in seeing a Carracosta standing in a modern laboratory. This creature was designed by the ancient seas of the Campanian Age. Its very cells remember the taste of salt water from a vanished ocean, the Western Interior Seaway that once split North America in two. The world it was built for has been gone for 66 million years, erased by the asteroid impact that closed the Cretaceous. Yet here it is, breathing the filtered air of a museum, resting in a terrarium, or swimming in a modern pond. The rock typing it received during revival gives it a solid anchor to the past. It is a living fossil, a stone-filled memory of the sea turned into flesh and blood. Tirtouga and Carracosta represent the deep time of the oceans, the heavy shells and slow metabolisms of the ancient turtles. But the path through the relic castle led to a choice. The cover fossil revived this marine memory, but the other fossil handed to the trainer, the plume fossil, contains a very different memory entirely. Not a memory of water and crushing jaws, but a memory of air, a memory of the first feathers, a memory of lifting off the ground in a Jurassic forest, trying to escape the shadows of the dinosaurs below. The plume fossil holds that memory of air. When taken to the Naktot City Museum, the ancient material inside is restored into a Pokémon, unlike anything else in the region. Archen emerges as a small feathered creature with sharp claws, a long tail, and wings that are not quite suited to effortless flight. It is awkward, alert, and visibly caught between two worlds. Its body carries the traits of a dinosaur, but its feathers point toward the birds that would one day inherit the skies. Archen is inspired by Archaeopteryx, one of the most famous fossils ever discovered. Archaeopteryx lived roughly 150 million years ago during the late Jurassic period. For generations, it has stood as a symbol of transition. It had feathers and wings, yet it also had teeth, clawed fingers, and a bony tail. It was not a modern bird, and it was no longer simply a ground-bound dinosaur. It was evidence that the boundary between dinosaurs and birds was never as clear as people once believed. That uncertainty is built directly into Archen's behaviour. Its Pokédex descriptions emphasise that it could not fly well at first. Instead, it leaped from tree to tree, using its wings to glide, steer, and soften its landing. This is one of the most fascinating possibilities in the story of flight. Before an animal can truly soar, it may first need to fall safely. A feathered dinosaur could climb into the branches, launch itself outward, and use its growing wings to cross gaps that would otherwise be impossible. When Archen evolves, the compromise disappears. Archeops becomes a powerful aerial hunter, its wings broad, its claws formidable, and its colourful feathers displayed like a living banner from the Jurassic. It no longer looks like a creature testing the air. It looks like one that has claimed it. Archeops can fly at incredible speeds, diving down from above to seize prey before it has time to react. But Archeops retains one of the strangest battle abilities in all of Pokémon: Defeatist. When its health falls low, its fighting power drops sharply. On the surface, this seems to weaken an otherwise extraordinary creature. Yet it also gives Archeops a peculiar realism. An animal built for explosive movement cannot afford to waste energy once it is injured. A damaged wing, an exhausted body, or a painful fall could turn a successful hunter into a vulnerable target in moments. Archeops is powerful, but it is not invincible. It is a fragile pioneer of the sky. The plume fossil therefore represents more than a prehistoric bird. It represents a turning point. Tirtouga preserves the ancient mastery of the sea, while Archen preserves the risky beginning of aerial life. One carries a shell built to endure pressure and impact. The other carries feathers built to catch the wind. Both are reminders that evolution does not move in a straight line. It experiments, stumbles, survives, and occasionally creates something capable of changing the world forever. From the ancient sea turtles of Tirtouga and Carracosta, the fossil record beneath the relic castle shifts dramatically, moving from the ocean depths to the open sky. The cover fossil, handed to you by a traveller among the ruins, held a scrappy aquatic survivor. The plume fossil, given in the exact same moment, held something far more delicate and far more controversial in its implications for the entire Pokémon family tree. Revived from the plume fossil, Archen emerges as a small, feathered creature, standing roughly 1.5 feet tall. Its design is an explicit homage to one of paleontology's most famous and celebrated transitional fossils, Archaeopteryx. This animal lived roughly 150 million years ago, during the late Jurassic period. It represents a decisive link in the fossil record, possessing a blend of features that bridge the gap between non-avian dinosaurs and modern birds. Feathers for insulation and eventually flight, a wishbone, but also teeth, a long bony tail, and claws on its wings. Archen carries these same traits. It is a creature caught between two worlds, a living embodiment of evolutionary transition. The Pokédex makes a characteristically sweeping statement regarding Archen. It claims that this Pokémon is the ancestor of all bird Pokémon. This is an immense claim, one that transposes a deeply debated scientific hypothesis into definitive game lore. In our own world, the identity of the very first bird is fiercely contested. Archaeopteryx was long held as the undisputed earliest bird, the Ervagel, but discoveries of older feathered dinosaurs and primitive birds like Anorith have complicated the story. The Archen line dictates this reality for the Pokémon world, asserting a singular point of origin for everything from Pidgey to Ho-Oh. It elevates this one small fossil from a mere curiosity to a potential genesis. When Archen reaches a certain level of maturity, it evolves into Archeops. The transformation is striking. Archeops is much larger, standing over 4.5 feet tall. It becomes highly colourful, adorned with a vibrant plumage of red, blue, and yellow, looking less like a primitive transitional form and more like a modern bird dressed for a grand display. Its large wings and powerful legs suggest a specific method of locomotion, probably a clumsy, flapping run-up to escape predators or a leaping pursuit of prey. It was not a master of the air, but a pioneer, testing the boundaries of a new frontier. But for all its visual power and evolutionary significance, Archeops carries a profound weakness in its core design. Its ability is called Defeatist. When its health falls below half, this ability cuts its attack and special attack stats in half. The creature associated with the very origin of flight, the possible ancestor of all birds, becomes weaker the moment its confidence is shaken. The narrative irony here is sharp and deliberate. The pioneer of the sky is perpetually teetering on the edge of hopelessness. It represents a fragile breakthrough, a success that could so easily have ended in failure. Its bright colours might be a display of health, but its heart races with the fear of falling. A creature built for the sky is brought low by a lack of nerve. It is a wonderfully human weakness for a species that represents such a monumental evolutionary leap. Game Freak designed defeatist as a mechanical penalty, but it serves a deeper purpose. It grounds the ancestor of flight, making it mortal, fallible, and deeply relatable. The plume fossil gave life to a creature that defined a boundary, the thin line between the safety of the earth and the boundless potential of the sky. But that boundary was barely crossed, and the memory of the struggle remains ingrained in its very being. From the Jurassic forests where Archeops fought to master the air, the fossil record moves forward in time toward a world of towering giants and unparalleled apex predators, where the rules of survival were rewritten entirely on a much grander scale. The question of where birds came from lingers in the air long after Archen and Archeops take their place in the fossil record. Their feathers, their hollow bones, their claws, all point to a lineage that bridges the gap between the dinosaurs of the Jurassic and the birds fluttering in the trees of the modern Pokémon world. But for all the mystery surrounding that first flight, the fossil story of Generation 6 returns to the ground. Not the ground of ancient seabeds or desert ruins, but the ground of a cave whose walls glitter with minerals and memory. The player reaches Glittering Cave on the eastern edge of Kalos, a cavern system where the rock itself seems alive with crystalline light. The walls catch every beam of the player's flashlight and throw it back in fragments of gold and silver, like the cave is hoarding the sun. This is not a place of sand or shattered seafloor. It is a vault, and deep inside, after an encounter with the crimson-clad members of Team Flare, a group whose philosophy revolves around beauty and the destruction of the imperfect, the player is presented with a choice. 2 fossils rest on the stone, each one a relic from an age that the region of Kalos has embraced more openly than any generation before it. The age of the dinosaur kings. The first is the jaw fossil. Its shape is unmistakable. Even in stone, the curve of the upper jaw holds the memory of teeth the size of railroad spikes. This is the remnant of a predator built to rule by force, a creature whose name would later echo the tyrant lizard king of our own world. The second is the sail fossil. It is longer, flatter, and the ridge running along its back suggests a fan of bone that once rose from the spine of something vast and gentle. This is the fossil of a long-necked giant, the kind of dinosaur that moved through the forests like a mountain walking. Kalos, for all its elegance and artistry, chose to look back at the most iconic forms the dinosaur world ever produced. After years of ammonites, trilobites, ancient turtles, and transitional birds, the designers of this generation finally gave players the 2 archetypes that fuel nearly every childhood fascination with prehistoric life: the tyrant predator and the towering long neck. Tyrantrum, revived from the jaw fossil, stands as a pure theropod, a bipedal carnivore with a jaw designed to crush bone. Its design is unapologetically regal: a crown of stone spike, a frill of white bone around the neck, and that terrible grin. The Pokédex describes it as the king of the ancient world, and its presence in battle is as domineering as its real-world inspiration. Aurorus, revived from the sail fossil, is its antithesis. Where Tyrantrum is aggression, Aurus is awe. Its body, inspired by sauropods like Amargasaurus, carries a glowing sail along its back that radiates light and cold. The Pokédex claims it could create aurora borealis-like displays, turning its spine into a curtain of icicles and shimmering energy. It is a Pokémon of serene power, a reminder that the Age of Giants was not just about teeth and claws, but also about the quiet enormity of creatures who could lift their heads above the treetops and watch the world grow. The player can only take 1 fossil. The other remains in the cave, buried again in the glittering walls, left silent for another visit, another trainer, another timeline. It is the same fork in the road the player has faced before. Choose the helix or the dome, the root or the claw, the skull or the armor. But this time, the choice carries a different weight. This is not a choice between a crustacean and a mollusk, or between two invertebrates. This is a choice between two of the most recognizable creatures ever to walk the earth. One is the ultimate predator, the monster that haunted the dreams of every child who ever saw a dinosaur skeleton in a museum. The other is the gentle giant, the long-necked wonder that stretched its body across the Jurassic landscape and ate from the tops of trees. Both are kings in their own right, but only one can be brought back. The cave itself seems to acknowledge the gravity of the moment. Its walls glitter with minerals that have been forming for millions of years, the slow work of time compressing life into stone. The fossils embedded here are not just bones, they are the signatures of an entire epoch, and in choosing one, the player leaves the other in the dark, a permanent silence where a second king might have ruled. Kalos, more than any region before it, leaned into the romance of dinosaurs. It did not try to reinterpret them through the lens of sea creatures or ancient arthropods. It gave us the dinosaur in its most classic, unapologetic form, and it reminded us that the fossil record is not a complete story. For every Tyrantrum that roars again, there is an Ororus that never wakes, its sail still folded beneath the earth, its cry still waiting in the stone. The glittering cave holds both, and the choice is always ours. Inside the jaw fossil rested the king of the ancient world. The Tyrannosaurus rex, the tyrant lizard, is the most famous dinosaur in human culture, a symbol of raw and undisputed power. When the fossil was revived by the scientists of the stone commerce, it did not emerge as a towering monster. It emerged as Tyrant, a small bipedal reptile standing roughly the height of a human child. But the ferocity was already there, concentrated into a dense and living package. The enormous head, the jagged teeth that did not fit its small frame, the tiny arms that held no weapons. Tyrant was modelled after the cultural legend of the T-Rex, the king before it could rule. The Kalos Pokédex classifies it as a rock dragon type, a rare combination that speaks to its ancient and draconic heritage. It is described as selfish and spoiled. If it is hungry, it will knock over its trainer to get to food. It bites everything it sees. It is the personality of a monarch trapped in the body of a prince. It demands the world, but it cannot yet take it. To do that, Tyrant needed something that the laboratory could not provide. It needed the light of a living sun. Unlike any fossil Pokémon before it, Tyrant does not evolve simply by reaching a certain level. It does not need a special item or a specific location. It requires the passage of time itself. It must be exposed to the daylight. The evolution from Tyrant to Tyrantrum only occurs when the creature levels up during the day. As if the ancient sun, the same star that shone down on the Cretaceous, is the only force strong enough to trigger its final form. It must awaken beneath the ancient sun, feeling the warmth of a world it once ruled. When that sunlight touches Tyrant, the transformation is sudden and dramatic. The body grows to over 8 feet tall. The stone crown, the very rock of its fossilized life, erupts from its head, forming an orange and jagged royal diadem. The jaw strengthens. The roar deepens. Tyrantrum has arrived, the tyrant king of the land. The Pokédex entries are unanimous in their reverence. One entry states that its powerful jaw can crush a car in a single bite. Another claims it ruled the ancient world as a king, and that none could oppose it. Its design leans heavily into the kingly aesthetic, with the stone crown and a mantle of white fur like a royal stole. It is Rock Dragon, a creature of immense destructive power and royal authority. In its own time, it truly was the uncontested sovereign of the prehistoric world. But there is a silence beneath that roar, a shadow behind the crown. The king is dead. Extinction is the great leveler. The Tyrantrum, for all its power, for all its crowns and decrees, could not survive the planetary change that ended the Cretaceous period. The asteroid that struck the Earth 65 million years ago was indifferent to the king's authority. The cold, the darkness, the collapse of the ecosystem. A jaw of immense strength cannot crush a falling star. A roar cannot stop the world from growing cold. This is the hidden tragedy of Tyrantrum. It is a king, but its kingdom is gone. The rock type that defines it, and all fossil Pokémon, is a result of the mineral infusion that brought it back to life. But it is also a permanent scar, a reminder of the stone that was its tomb for millions of years. It is a creature of magnificent power, revived in a world that has evolved far beyond its reign, a monument to the ultimate fragility of strength. The other fossil in the glittering cave held a different kind of ancient destiny. The king of the land had its day under the hot Cretaceous sun. But as the world changed, as the warmth began to drain from the earth, a different sovereign was already waiting. A ruler whose kingdom was defined not by the heat of the sun, but by the cold of the distant stars. A crown of aurora, ready for a world of ice. Within the sail fossil slept Amora, a gentle creature from an age when the skies were growing dim. Its body resembles a young sauropod, but its true inspiration comes from an ancient marine reptile, the Amargasaurus, with its long neck and strange rows of spines. In Amora, those spines become glowing crystalline sails, shimmering with colours like the northern lights. It is a rock-ice type, a combination that makes it seem less like an animal and more like a living fragment of a frozen dawn. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. From the glittering cave of Kalos, a different specimen was pulled. Not the tyrannical king of the tropics, the gentle giant of the frozen north. The sail fossil held the genetic data for a dinosaur adapted to cold northern environments. Its revival gave the world Amora. Amora is a gentle dinosaur fossil. Its Pokédex entries are consistent in describing a remarkably docile creature. It was an herbivore that moved in herds. It disliked the heat of the modern world and would form close bonds with its trainer, who acted as its guardian in a climate it was not built for. Its blue skin and darker patches, the diamond crystals on its hip, and the distinct sail running from its head to its tail set it apart from every prehistoric creature previously revived. That sail is the key to its biological heritage. Real-world paleontologists recognize the shape of Amargasaurus, a small sauropod from the early Cretaceous period. Amargasaurus is famous for the double row of tall spines on its neck and back, likely supporting a skin sail used for thermoregulation or display. But the Pokémon world takes this concept and transplants it to a completely different context. It transforms the sauropod idea into an aurora-lit ice-type giant. Instead of the deserts of South America, Amara lived in a prehistoric tundra. The sail is no longer a simple fleshy frill. It becomes a radiant organ, capable of absorbing and manipulating cold. The elements of ice and rock merge into a single creature, creating an animal that belongs to the snow. The mineral infusion that revived it gave it a diamond-like hardness and a freezing touch. When the sun goes down and the stars come out, Amora evolves. The night is its time. Evolution into Aurorus requires the darkness. The gentle giant awakens to its full power beneath the moon. Aurorus is a massive creature. Its sail unfurls into a vast glowing cape of pure energy. The diamonds on its body store cold at temperatures reaching 150 degrees below zero. Its shimmering sails truly resemble the northern lights. The aurora borealis is literally refracted through its biology. It can create brilliant displays of light to confuse predators and signal to other members of its herd across vast frozen distances. It is a living aurora, a dinosaur that carries the polar sky on its back. This completely complicates the usual dinosaur image. Pop culture often presents prehistoric life as a violent tropical landscape, full of dust and roaring thunder lizards. Everything is brown or green. Everything is fighting. Aurorus challenges every single one of those tropes. It is serene. It is elegant. Its colours are vivid blues, purples and glowing pinks. It represents a prehistoric environment that was cold, silent, and filled with light. The real world has found evidence of polar dinosaurs. Species like Lialinazora from Australia lived in the Cretaceous polar circle. experiencing months of darkness. Aurorus feels like an embodiment of this forgotten polar ecosystem. It perfectly fits the niche of a large herbivore grazing beneath the aurora. Tyrantrum represents the sun, the apex violence of the lower latitudes. Aurorus represents the moon, the calm beauty of the north. They are two halves of a single prehistoric coin, found in the same cave, revived by the same scientist. Yet they require opposite conditions to reach their full potential: day and night, summer and winter. This duality sits at the heart of Kalos' fossil legacy. It proves that the age of dinosaurs was not just one climate, not just one story. It was a world of ecological extremes. Aurorus is the winter of the long necks. The Kalos fossil revival was a clean process. A whole skeleton provided a single set of data, allowing for a perfect restoration that matched a prehistoric template exactly. The experiments in the regions that followed would not be afforded such luxury. The pieces were not always perfect. The results were not always so pure. The laboratories of Hoenn faced a different reality. Their fossils were fragments, pieces of a larger puzzle. The root fossil and claw fossil offered only glimpses of ancient life. From these partial remains, scientists revived Lileep and Anorith. Lileep, a creature of the deep, clung to the seafloor with tentacles, while Anorith, the shrimp Pokémon, was a swift hunter. These revivals were triumphs of science, but they were also exercises in reconstruction. Without whole skeletons, researchers had to infer structures and behaviors, leading to Pokémon that were as much creations as they were discoveries. This pattern persisted in Sinnoh. The skull fossil and armor fossil produced Cranidos and Shieldon. Cranidos was a dinosaur that lived in herds, using its thick skull to ram trees and foes. Shieldon was a grazer from the same era, but its evolution Bastiodon became a walking fortress. Yet their revival raised questions about accuracy. Were these the true forms of their ancestors? In Unova, the answers grew murkier. The combination of bird and fish fossils in the relic castle spawned Archen and Tirtouga. Archen was a primitive bird, unable to fly but capable of gliding. Tirtouga was a sea turtle, but its evolution Carracosta was a sea predator. These chimeras blurred the lines between species. The process of revival had become a dance with uncertainty. The Kalos method, with its pristine fossils, stood apart. It delivered pure, unaltered life from the past. The rest of the fossil revival story is a testament to human ingenuity and the enduring mystery of what lived before us. Each revived Pokémon carries the weight of its fragmented history. They are bridges to a time we can never fully know, but we continue to piece together their stories, one fossil at a time. We saw Kalos introduce dinosaurs of ice and fire, Aurorus, a gentle giant bathed in aurora light, a sauropod reimagined as a bringer of winter. But the oldest skull in the Kalos fossil record, the one that was never buried in stone or frozen in permafrost, came not from a dinosaur. It came from something older, something that ruled the ancient skies long before the first bird evolved. It came from Aerodactyl. We have not spoken of Aerodactyl since the very beginning of this story. Back in the Kanto region, it was the first fossil Pokémon to represent the age of reptiles, the Jurassic, a pterosaur preserved in the amber of the old amber, a fragment of tree resin that held a piece of a winged predator. Generations have passed since we last dug up its lore. We have seen the rebirth of ancient fish, the armored trilobites, the first birds, the dinosaur kings, the turtles that remembered the sea. The revival technology itself has evolved, from the Cinnabar lab to the desert facilities of Hoenn to the chilling experiments of Galar. But Aerodactyl remained a constant, a single data point from the earliest days of Pokémon paleontology. That changed in Generation 6. In Kalos, the very region where we found Tyrantrum and Aurorus, a new power was unlocked: Mega Evolution, a temporary burst of immense energy, a second wind for Pokémon that had reached their final forms. For some Pokémon, this transformation was more than just a power boost. It was a regression, a reaching back into the genetic memory. When Aerodactyl was given a Megastone, its form did not grow sleeker or more refined. It grew more jagged, more feral. Its body became encased in sharp, rocky protrusions. Its skin tightened over a skeletal frame that seemed more prominent, more ancient. Its jaw locked into a permanent snarl. The Pokédex entry for Mega Aerodactyl makes a stunning claim. It states that this transformation restores the Pokémon to its original appearance. The implication is staggering. The Aerodactyl we have known for over 20 years, the one revived from the old amber, was not a true replica. It was an approximation, an imperfect restoration. Fossils are not blueprints, they are fragments. A skeleton is a scaffold, not the living creature. The soft tissues, the colours, the sounds, the behaviour, all of it must be inferred. In the Pokémon world, the scientists at the Cinnabar lab did their best with the technology they had. They took the genetic material from the amber and filled in the gaps with their own understanding. They gave it rock-type qualities because the minerals of the fossil bed had leached into its very structure. They rounded its edges. They tamed its fury. But the Mega Evolution, powered by a keystone and a specific megastone found deep within Kalos, seems to bypass that modern interpretation. It taps directly into the raw, unedited template of the creature. Mega Aerodactyl is not just a powered-up version of the standard form. It is a restoration of the original predator, a being that was less a creature of rock and more a creature of pure, relentless predation. This forces us to reconsider every other fossil Pokémon we have encountered. If Aerodactyl's standard form is an interpretation, what of Omastar? Is its shell a true representation of the prehistoric Ammonite, or did the revival process simplify its spiraling complexity? What of Kabutops? Did it truly stand upright and walk the beaches as it? Or is that a bipedal reconstruction based on human assumptions about how a predator should look? We assume the sharp scythes, the domed shell, the eager eyes, but these are the product of a machine that uses preserved material and modern science. The machine is an act of translation, and every translation loses some of the original nuance. The process of fossil revival in the Pokémon world is not a simple case of cloning. It is an interpretive art. The fossils are ground down, their ancient DNA is extracted, and the mineral components of the original rock are fused with the flesh and bone through a process referred to as mineral infusion. This gives them the rock typing. The machine uses its database of modern life to fill in the gaps. It builds a creature that should be functional, that should fit into the modern world. It does not build a creature that is exactly what once was. Mega Aerodactyl suggests that deep within every fossil Pokémon, there is a ghost in the machine, a memory of the original form. The Mega Stone acts as a key, unlocking that hidden data, overriding the 20th century interpretation with a Mesozoic reality. This idea becomes even more haunting when we look at the fusions of Galar, Dracovish, Arctovish, Dracozolt, Arctozolt. Those are not interpretations, they are mistakes. Dr. Hoenn combined two different sets of fossilized remains, ignoring the natural order entirely. The result is not an ancient power restored, but a confused, suffering chimera. They lack the cohesive grace of Mega Aerodactyl because they lack the fundamental integrity of a single original creature. The revival machine in Galar was not trying to interpret a whole being, it was playing a game of parts. Mega Aerodactyl stands apart. It is the only fossil Pokémon whose Mega Evolution is explicitly described as a return to the original. It is not a new form, it is the old form rediscovered. The Kalos region, with its focus on beauty, life and evolution, gave us this gift. It allowed us to see what a fossil Pokémon was meant to be. A creature not of the museum, but of the Jurassic sky. A predator whose power was never lost, only waiting for the right key to unlock it. And yet the question remains, if the standard form is imperfect, are there other fossil Pokémon whose true forms are locked away, waiting for a similar key? Or is Aerodactyl the exception? The one whose fossilized amber held a perfect enough strand of data for the Megastone to complete the picture. The implication of the imperfect restoration hangs over every revived Pokémon. It suggests that the past is never fully recoverable. only reconstructed through the lens of the present. But what happens when the interpretation is bypassed entirely? What happens when the past is not stitched together from fragments, but arrives intact, pulled through time by a phenomenon far more mysterious than mineral infusion? The question of the original form was no longer a matter of science. It had become a matter of faith in what the past truly was. The pursuit of a true original form for Aerodactyl opened a box of questions. If a creature's ultimate power is only unlocked through an artificial burst of energy from a human-made stone, can we really claim to have restored its original state? The world of Kalos grappled with this contradiction, and the answer was left hanging in the air. But the Pokémon world doesn't stand still. From the gleaming peaks of Kalos and the primal power of a mega evolution, the journey turned. It turned toward the sun. It turned toward the warm, humid air of a tropical archipelago. It turned toward Alola. Here, for the first time since the very beginning of the franchise, the fossil record stopped. No new creatures to revive. No ancient DNA to sequence. The fossil break in Alola was a deliberate narrative silence. Generation 7, Alola, a region built on the backs of tectonic forces. Volcanic rock, porous and destructive to the delicate process of fossilization, dominates the landscape. The earth here does not cradle bones, it melts them. The islands of Alola are young, geologically speaking. Born of volcanic hotspots, they rose from the ocean floor in relatively recent prehistory. This is a land of fresh lava flows and coral reefs. Sedimentary basins, the crucibles of fossilization, are rare. The conditions required to perfectly preserve a creature's shape are almost entirely absent here. But the absence was not simply a geological accident. The story of this region was told through a completely different lens. Here, the history of the ancient past is not told through the bones of dead titans, but through the living DNA of Pokémon that adapted to survive. The Alolan forms of Vulpix, Sandshrew, Grimer, they are a living fossil record. They show adaptation in action, not extinction in amber. The islands tell stories of regional forms, Pokémon adjusting to unique island climates. They tell the story of guardian deities, the Tapas, ancient entities that never died out, but instead watched over the land for generations. The fossil fuel of this region was not ancient remains. It was the vibrant living ecosystem itself. The culture of Alola played a role as well. The connection to the past here is not a dismembered bone in a glass case. It is a living tradition, a dance, an island challenge. The past is a spirit that still walks among them. The professors of Alola were not interested in reviving the dead. Kukui studied moves and battle styles. Burnett studied dimensions and cosmology. The Ether Foundation was looking to the sky and the void, not the dirt. Their major scientific bodies poured resources into the study of ultra wormholes and ultra beasts. Their gaze was fixed on other dimensions, not on the ground beneath their feet. For the player, this was the first generation since the very first, where the question of which fossil simply never came up. No helix, no dome, no claw, no root, no skull, no armor, no cover, no plume, no jaw, no sail. The text of the journey was written without any ancient ink. This created a unique space, a pause in the relentless march of fossil discovery that characterized every other generation. The fossil record is not continuous. There are gaps, mass extinctions, unconformities. Alola was a gap in the game's fossil record, and it was a beautiful, quiet one. The result is a generation that is peaceful. The player never has to make a morally or scientifically tricky choice about which ancient skeleton to resurrect. There is no revived threat, no ancient army unleashed by a mad team. Team Skull, for all their scheming, are not digging up the dead to weaponize them. Team Ether's corruption is about preservation and control in the present, not exploitation of the past. This respite is a narrative gift. It allows the player to simply exist in the moment, to appreciate the current version of the Pokémon world without the haunting weight of its deep history. The tropical birds sing, the waves crash on the shore, and the bones sleep silently, miles below the surface of the earth, undisturbed. The quiet in Alola was the eye of the hurricane, the calm before the storm. Because when the next region looked down, it would not see a skeleton. It would see an experiment. It would see a puzzle where the pieces were never meant to fit together. The silence of the fossil break was about to be replaced by a cacophony of creation. The peaceful tropical sun was about to be eclipsed by the cold, industrial light of a laboratory where the rules of nature were rewritten. The researchers of the next generation would not look at the fossil record with reverence. They would look at it like a box of spare parts. The question of a creature's true form, which started with Aerodactyl, was not going to be answered by digging deeper. It was going to be answered by building taller and stranger from the ground up. Alola chose to step away from the fossil machines entirely. Its story was one of living islands, of regional forms adapting to the heat and rain, of guardian spirits that never died out. It was a quiet interlude. But as we travel north to the Galar region, a very different kind of scientific inquiry takes shape. One that would not just revive the past, but entirely dismantle the rules of how revival itself was meant to work. The old promise of fossil restoration, the understanding that held firm from Kanto to Kalos, is completely abandoned in Galar. That core contract was simple. A single complete fossil yielded a single distinct ancient creature. A dome fossil became Kabuto. A plume fossil became Archen. The process implied a linear history, a natural link between the distant past and the present. Galar does not honour this link. The fossil beds of this region did not yield complete skeletons. They yielded fragments, scattered pieces of a larger picture, as if the ancient life here had been torn apart by time itself, leaving only jumbled parts behind. 4 specific fragments survived the long collapse of ages. The fossilized bird, a delicate wishbone, hollow and light as charcoal. The fossilized drake, a thick gnarled leg joint, heavy with dense muscle attachment points. The fossilized dino, a heavy skull fragment built for blunt impact. And the fossilized fish, a serrated armored jaw designed for crushing ancient shells. On their own, each is just a piece of a puzzle with no box art. They are not the ingredients for 4 distinct species. They are halves, upper halves and lower halves that come from entirely different animals. The player can collect these pieces and bring them to a stretch of cold earth in the Crown Tundra, where a peculiar scientist named Cradily operates a strange industrial revival machine. Her laboratory does not look like a sterile research facility. It looks like a workshop, a place where things are repaired with force rather than care. She takes your 2 halves and fits them together. But she does not search for the correct match. She does not ask about anatomical compatibility. She crams the upper half of one creature into the lower half of another. The process is not a gentle infusion of mineral life. It is a jarring snap of bone into bone, a forced marriage of unacquainted species. This is where the premise of Galarian restoration crosses a clear line. It is not resurrection, it is assembly. The scientist treats the fossils not as sacred remnants of a lost world, but as raw material for an experiment. She is an engineer, not a curator, and the results are deeply disturbing. The Pokémon that emerge from her machine are not complete. They are chimeras, stitched together from pieces that nature never intended to coexist. Arctozolt is the fusion of the bird and dino fossils. It has the head and front claws of a fish adapted for cold northern waters, but the lower body of a scaly land reptile. It raises its head and shivers constantly, not from the cold of its environment, but from the cold of its own mismatched biology. Its icy top half freezes the organs of its reptilian bottom half. It generates electricity through this constant painful convulsion, an engine powered by its own suffering. Dracozolt fuses a bird head to the body of a muscular drake. It looks unstable, top-heavy and precarious. Its mind was built for flight, but its body was built for brute force. It generates electricity by running desperately, because to stop is to fail. It is a creature that must always be in motion, always generating power, just to survive the contradictions of its own design. Dracovish is perhaps the most tragic of the 4. It combines the powerful hind legs of a dinosaur with the enormous armored skull of a massive fish. Its jaws are crushing weapons, but the creature cannot breathe properly. The Pokédex states outright that it was a failure in nature. It went extinct not because of an asteroid, but because its own anatomy was unlivable. It could not breathe water efficiently, and it could not stay on land without suffocating. It is a contradiction that evolution rejected, brought back to a world where it must still struggle against its own broken blueprint. Arctovish fuses the fish head to the drake body in a way that leaves the face attached backwards onto the shoulders. The creature must contort its neck, straining against the torque of its own spine, just to bring food to its mouth. Every one of these creations is defined by its struggle. Their unique abilities, like Water Absorb or Volt Absorb, are not just type immunities. They feel like emergency measures, desperate dependencies baked into their very code, that the environment itself might sustain their flawed biology. These 4 broken relics of Galar ask the most profound ethical question the franchise has ever raised about the fossil project. In Kanto, the scientists at Cinnabar revived a creature out of curiosity and wonder. They restored a life that once was. In Galar, the scientist at the Crown Tundra assembles a creature out of ambition, forcing different dead things to coexist in a single struggling husk. She does not restore life to the dead. She invents new forms of suffering. The Galar fossils stand as a monument to a very specific kind of scientific mistake. They are alive, but they are broken, and the lesson they carry is that revival without understanding is a cruelty. The questions that they raise about the morality of forcing a mismatched creature into existence settles deep into the foundation of the entire fossil project. The past is not a toolbox, it is a legacy. And this burden of responsibility, this awareness that creation is never truly neutral, would cast a long shadow over every discovery yet to come on the prehistoric frontier. The 4 broken relics of Galar are scattered across the wild area, buried in the sand of the desert and the dirt of the Lake of Outrage. But these aren't whole fossils waiting to be unearthed. They are fragments, pieces of a puzzle that no one in the Pokémon world asked to be solved. But the person holding the puzzle box, whose cheerful and unwavering confidence drives the entire experiment from start to finish, is not the region's loudmouth professor, Peony. It is Carracosta, where Peony is a burly explorer, a man of action who cracks open rocks with his bare hands and shouts about the glory of discovery. Carracosta is the interpreter. She sits in her makeshift laboratory on Route 6, a quiet outpost near the bridge that overlooks the sea. Surrounded by the tools of her unusual trade, she greets the player with a smile that never wavers, no matter how strange the request. She explains her process with the pride of a true innovator. She has taken the separate pieces, the top half of a fish, the bottom half of a dinosaur, the torso of a bird, the legs of a drake, and she has combined them. Peony may have found the raw materials, or rather, the Digger brothers may have unearthed them for him, but Carracosta is the one who breathes the spark of life into them. She is not a rebuilder, she is a creator. This is a crucial distinction, because every other fossil revival in the history of Pokémon carries an air of serious, almost sacred science. The Cinnabar Island lab from the Kanto region, the one that brought back Omanyte and Kabuto, was a place of reverence. Fossils were tucked safely into their machines, and the resurrection was treated as a miracle, a restoration of something genuinely lost to time. Carracosta's lab is a workshop, a kitchen, a laboratory where the chef is making a new recipe. She is not restoring a species, she is assembling one. The text she speaks in the game is telling. She says, "Let's create some new ancient Pokémon, shall we?" The emphasis is not on reviving or restoring, it is on creating. Her work is a perfect mirror of the earliest, wildest days of paleontology, a time when the very concept of an extinct animal was still a thrilling, terrifying puzzle. In the 19th century, explorers and scientists assembled skeletons with the same bold confidence that Carracosta demonstrates. and they often got them profoundly, historically wrong. The Iguanodon was famously given a horn on its nose that was actually a spiked thumb, a defender's weapon placed on the face of a peaceful giant. The Elasmosaurus, the long-necked marine reptile, was reconstructed with its skull placed on its tail for years, leading scientists to believe it was a serpent-like dragon that coiled its neck into the water. The Brontosaurus, one of the most famous dinosaurs of all time, was eventually discovered to be a composite of two different creatures entirely, an Apatosaurus body with a Camarasaurus skull. These mistakes were born of the exact same spirit that Kalos embodies, a desperate, powerful desire to see the whole picture from the broken pieces. It is the ultimate exercise in pattern recognition and filling in the blanks. But there is a critical, chilling difference between the history of our own Earth and the events in the Galar region. In our history, the mistakes were eventually corrected. A new, more complete fossil would be found. A scholarly paper would be written retracting the old theory. The reconstruction was updated. The Iguanodon got its thumb back. The Elasmosaurus got its head in the right place. Kalos has no such mechanism for correction. She operates in absolute, unshakable certainty. She sees no mismatch. Her Pokédex entries do not lament the flaws of her creations. They actively celebrate them. Consider Dracovish. Its physical form is a catastrophe. It has the head and upper body of a fish, fused to the lower body and legs of a dinosaur. It cannot breathe underwater. It is constantly drowning the moment it stops running. The language used for Arctozolt describes a creature shivering constantly, its body locked in a conflict between generating electricity and freezing itself. And yet the Pokédex treats this as a unique adaptation, a sign of its tenacity. Kalos looks at these creatures and sees nothing but success. This is where the tone shifts from quirky to gently eerie. She is not a villain. Her dialogue is cheerful. She thanks the player. She rewards them. There is no malice in her digital eyes. But she is a scientist who has succeeded completely in her own subjective universe. Her research goal was to create life from these fragments, and she has. The fact that the life she created is suffering, or fundamentally broken on a biological level, does not register as a failure in her mind. It does not trigger guilt or a desire to fix it. It registers as a new data point, a successful demonstration of her theory. She has proven she can do it. The quality of the life is irrelevant to the thrill of the achievement. The game itself fully supports her. She is not punished. She is not questioned by Professor Peony, who claims the fossils for himself, or by the player character, who just wants to fill the Pokédex. She rewards the player with items. She is celebrated for her discovery within the game's code. The unsettling truth is that within the strict logic of the Pokémon world, she has created viable species. They can battle in competitive tournaments. They can breed. They can be transferred into future generations through Pokémon Home. The metaphysical mechanics of the Pokémon universe, the ditto that follows the logic of breeding, accepts these mismatched combinations as perfect templates for new life. Dracovish became a legend in competitive play, a creature of pure function, its design flaws irrelevant compared to its devastating moves. The horror of its existence is completely invisible to the machinery of the game. She insists the mismatch is a discovery, and in a very real, very uncomfortable way it is. It is a discovery of how far the desire to revive the past can twist the responsibility of the present. It is a discovery that the tools of science can create a reality that nature never intended, and that the system we play within will happily accept that reality. This forces a very quiet, very deep question upon the entire history of fossil Pokémon that we have spent this entire journey exploring. Where does the truth of a creature end, and the ambition of its creator begin? If a scientific miracle can be built from perfectly matched, interchangeable parts, what is the fundamental difference between a revival and a fabrication? Every fossil Pokémon we have ever seen, from the first Omanyte to the last Tyrantrum, was interpreted by a human hand. A fossil record is always incomplete. The scientist in the lab always has a choice in how to fill the gaps. The scientists in Kanto chose reverence. The scientists in Hoenn chose aesthetics. Kalos chose function. She chose the impossible, and she chose to ignore the cracks. The callousness of her optimism is the quietest, strangest horror in the entire fossil timeline. Kalos takes the fossilized fragments and unites them into living creatures. She offers exactly 4 combinations. And the first 2 pair a single bird fossil with either the lower body of an ancient dragon or a dinosaur. The results are Dracozolt and Arctozolt. Dracozolt combines the upper body of a bird with the powerful hind legs and tail of an ancient aquatic reptile, the drake fossil. The result is an electric and dragon type. Its muscles are powerful enough to generate immense amounts of electricity on their own. Its Pokédex entries describe it as being strong enough to overwhelm a Tyrantrum in its ancient habitat, but there is a deep sadness in its design. Its stance is awkward, hunched. The game states plainly that its revived anatomy leaves it permanently uncomfortable. It survived in the past through sheer force, but it was a monster built from mismatched parts. It could generate lightning, but it could never feel at ease in its own skin. It was powerful, it was alive, but nature never intended this combination. The same bird upper body is fused with the lower body of a dinosaur from the dino fossil. This creates Arctozolt, an electric and ice type. If Dracozolt's tragedy is chronic discomfort, Arctozolt's is outright incompatibility. Its body is frozen, preserved by an ancient chill. The upper half, the bird, generates electricity. This constant electrical heating against its frozen lower body creates a violent shiver that it cannot control. It is constantly shaking, generating more power, which makes the conflict inside it worse. Its Pokédex entries say it went extinct because it could not properly regulate its temperature. The electrical energy and the freezing body are locked in an eternal struggle within the same creature. It shivers, it sparks, and it can never find peace. It is a living contradiction. A pattern emerges from Karalis's lab. These are not simply revived Pokémon. They are chimeras. In the past, scientists could perfectly reconstruct an entire ancient creature from a single fossil. In Galar, we learned that the fossil record is fragmentary, and Karalis filled in the gaps with whatever was available. The result is creatures that are powerful. Certainly, Dracozolt can overwhelm dinosaurs. Arctozolt can freeze the air and blast lightning, but they are also deeply flawed. They are strong, they are alive, and that very life comes at a terrible cost. The game hints through its lore that these Pokémon are in constant pain, or at least constant distress. They are a testament to human ambition over nature's wisdom. They are the living echoes of a mistake, a reminder that just because we can bring something back does not mean we should. The bird-based fusions struggle with their form and their internal temperature, but the tragedy of the Galar fossils does not end with them. There are 2 more combinations, both built from the fish fossil, and their suffering plays out in the depths of the sea, where an entirely different set of anatomical mismatches creates another kind of living paradox. The fish fossil can be joined to the drake fossil, creating Dracovish, a water and dragon type, whose history is as strange as its silhouette. Unlike the bird fusions, Dracovish appears almost energetic. It has powerful legs, a massive tail, and enough raw strength to move with frightening speed. According to its Pokédex entries, it could run at incredible speeds even though it was an aquatic creature. In its ancient world, it was apparently a dominant predator, capable of chasing down prey both through the water and across the land, but its strength did not save it. Dracovish could breathe only while submerged in water. That means its powerful running ability was almost absurdly useless, a gift attached to a body that could not safely remain on land. One entry suggests that it hunted so effectively that it consumed its own food supply and drove itself toward extinction. Whether that story describes the original ancient Pokémon or the bizarre creature created in Karalis's lab, the result is bleak. Dracovish is built to chase, built to hunt, built to dominate, yet its very existence is restricted by an anatomical contradiction. It has the legs of a runner and the needs of a fish. It is an apex predator assembled into a body that cannot fully support its own lifestyle. Then there is Arctovish, perhaps the most unsettling of all 4 fossil Pokémon. It combines the fish fossil with the dino fossil, producing a water and ice type. Its body is cold, durable, and strangely suited to frozen environments. Its Pokédex entries describe skin so tough that attacks could barely harm it. It seems at first like the most protected of the fossil revivals, but the details of its design reveal a crueler problem. Arctovish has a fish head positioned in a way that makes feeding nearly impossible. Its mouth is placed high on its body, leaving it unable to catch prey in any normal way. It can breathe, it can swim, it can survive the cold, yet it may be unable to properly eat. The very part of its body meant to sustain it has been arranged into a useless position. It is another creature restored to life without the basic anatomy needed for a stable existence. Its icy body adds to the horror. Arctovish can preserve its surroundings in freezing cold, but that cold does not make it graceful or complete. It simply turns its tragedy into something quieter. Dracozolt suffers through strain. Arctozolt trembles from internal conflict. Dracovish is trapped between land and water. Arctovish may drift through frigid seas with strength, defense, and no practical way to feed itself. Together, the 4 Galar fossils tell a story that is much darker than a simple resurrection mechanic. Each one has a remarkable ability. Each one carries evidence of a creature that may once have been formidable, yet each has been reconstructed through guesswork, fragments, and a willingness to ignore whether the pieces truly belong together. Cradily does not revive the past. She creates new life from pieces of the past, and that life inherits the consequences of every mistake. We saw what happened when Cradily combined the bird and the drake. The result was Dracozolt, lightning trapped in a body that could never truly fly, and the union of the bird and the dinosaur gave us Arctozolt, shivering uncontrollably beneath its own electrical charge. If those combinations produced such profoundly unstable results, the remaining fossils, anchored by the fossilized fish, were never going to find a kinder fate. Meet Dracovish. It is the fusion of the fossilized fish and the fossilized drake. Its anatomy is pure absurdity. The upper body is a draconic predator, complete with a massive jaw and teeth designed to crush bone. The lower body is the tail and fin of a prehistoric fish. It looks like a dragon that decided to stand on a fish. This improbable design made it one of the most famous modern creatures in the entire Pokémon franchise. Its popularity is not despite its strangeness, but entirely because of it. But the Pokédex entries reveal a darker side to its existence. Dracovish possesses legs capable of running at speeds exceeding 60 miles per hour. It has immense physical strength, powerful enough to tear through solid rock, and yet it cannot breathe unless it is underwater. Every moment it spends on land is a slow suffocation. Its signature move, Vicious Rend, is devastatingly powerful in battle, but that power is rooted in a body fighting against the very air it breathes, a desperate gasp for oxygen that will never come. Arctovish is the combination of the fossilized fish and the fossilized dino. Its head is perfectly preserved, but it is fused to a body designed for an entirely different creature. The head is attached at a 180-degree angle, making it completely unable to swim. For a creature that once ruled the ancient seas, this is a profound cruelty. Its face is impervious to attack, a frozen mask of resilience, but its breathing difficulties make it one of the hardest Pokémon to handle. It is a strangely resilient chimera. The cold that preserved it in death now suffocates it in life. And this brings us to the unavoidable question at the core of Galar's entire fossil experiment. If a revived Pokémon suffers, does the achievement of restoring life justify the method? Cradily succeeded in her goal. She pulled these creatures back from extinction, but the bodies are wrong. The pieces do not fit. The soul of Arctovish longs to swim and it cannot. The soul of Dracovish longs to breathe and it cannot. The games ask us to hold two truths at once. These creatures are powerful and effective in battle. Players genuinely love using Dracovish, and yet the lore insists on their suffering. We are participants in their pain, using their desperate strength to win our victories. It is a deeply uncomfortable ethical space. The Galar fossils represent the ragged edge of fossil revival science. They are not triumphs. They are experiments that succeeded technically, but failed ethically. The question of whether they should exist hangs over them like a shadow. The technology does not refine itself further. It simply stops. The chimeras remain scattered and gasping. They are the final troubled word on humanity's attempt to master a past that perhaps should have stayed buried. And perhaps that is what makes them so memorable. Earlier fossil Pokémon were monuments to ancient life, restored with flaws that could be overlooked. The Galar fossils are different. Their flaws are the point. They force us to look directly at the cost of treating living creatures as puzzles to be solved. There is also an irony in the way these revivals are presented. Carracosta speaks with complete confidence, never seeming to recognize that combining unrelated remains could be a mistake. Her certainty turns a scientific miracle into something almost careless. She does not see monsters, she sees results. But the player can see the contradiction immediately. A fish with dragon legs, a dinosaur with a fish head, bodies assembled from history without any concern for the life trapped inside them. Galar's fossils are funny at first glance, then unsettling the longer we consider what their Pokédex entries imply. They are survivors of an impossible second extinction, not lost to time, but rescued incorrectly. And in that sense, they may be the most tragic fossil Pokémon of all. The Dracovish we left behind in Galar was never meant to exist. A fish head on a drake body, fighting for every breath its mismatched organs could scavenge. It was the end point of a scientific process that had gone terribly and fascinatingly wrong. And after such a deeply strange experiment, the franchise that had so lovingly built this paleontological museum packed up its revival machines and walked quietly away from the excavation. We arrive now in Paldea, a sun-drenched land of wide-open skies, where Generation Nike introduces no traditional fossil Pokémon and no new fossil revival quest at all. Not a single ancient bone to be returned to life. Not a single researcher in a remote laboratory waiting for you to make a choice that will define the past. Paldea feels like a world already deeply aware of its own history without needing to dig it up. The land itself is vast and open, shaped by forces far older than any fossil lab. The familiar quest is simply absent. No helix fossil waiting underground. No root fossil buried in the shifting sands of a desert. Not even the broken combination of parts we saw in the Crown Tundra. For the first time since the tropical islands of Alola, the fossil revival quest is completely absent from the main journey. Generation IX closes the book on traditional restoration, leaving the machines silent. But the region is not without creatures that look deeply ancient. Paradox Pokémon roam the depths of Area Zero, a massive crater at the heart of Paldea. Great Tusk, a titanic elephantine beast covered in bristling hairs that echoes the very foundation of Donphan. Screamtail, a creature that shares the round, floating shape of Jigglypuff, but seems ripped from the Permian era, covered in a primal fur. These designs look like fossils. They look like they belong in the ground of a much older world. But an ancient appearance alone does not make a species a revival. These are not rock types rebuilt from mineralized bones. They are not the product of a paleontologist's machine. They are contemporaries from a different timeline, encountered 50 feet underground, not resurrected from a geological layer. The series makes a crucial distinction between the aesthetic of the ancient and the process of resurrection. One is style, the other is method. Scarlet and Violet take the franchise's long fascination with deep time and redirect it entirely. Instead of bringing the past forward through extraction and mineral infusion, they ask, what if the past was always here, hidden in a separate layer of reality? What if the future could follow the same path back? The Paradox Pokémon are not revived. They are temporal anomalies encountered in a crater that seems to bend the rules of chronology. A place where time pools like water. The games introduced the idea of a time machine, built not by a paleontologist in a lab coat, but by a professor who studies the possibilities of divergent causality. This is the fundamental shift from archaeology to speculation. The fossil narratives always told stories about creatures displaced from their proper era. The paradox Pokémon do exactly the same thing, but they are not remnants left behind. They are travelers, or echoes, or prototypes from a world that branched away from ours. The franchise's speculative zoo expands from paleontology to a deeper chronobiology, exploring what evolution looks like when it is untethered from linear time, a future that is prehistoric, a past that is technological. The rules of geological strata no longer apply. When we step back and look at the entire assembly of fossil Pokémon across 9 generations, a final pattern emerges. Fossils are only one way Pokémon tell stories about creatures displaced from their proper era. The Kabuto that was frozen in a fossil fought alongside creatures that were never preserved as fossils at all. The Aerodactyl that prowled the Jurassic skies is no different in its basic narrative function from the Iron Moth that descends from a future yet to come. They are all anachronisms. Every single one is a creature out of time. The fossil Pokémon represent the archaeological branch of this fascination. They are the specimens that took 20 or 30 generations of game time to reconstruct, requiring excavation and the suspension of disbelief. The paradox Pokémon represent the theoretical, almost quantum branch, but the root is the same. A deep, quiet fascination with what happens when life exists in a time that is not its own, when the boundaries of era and epoch dissolve into a thick soup of possibility. After centuries of revival, combination, and temporal meddling across the games, the series has quietly gathered its specimens into one great collection, sprawling and impossible. Some were buried in stone, some were stitched together by a grinning scientist, some were carried here by a device we barely understand from a world that runs on a different set of physical laws, and some were always waiting for us to look up from the ground, to realize that the past does not only exist behind us, it exists beside us, and the future is already here, roaming the same fields we call our present. This is the final shape of the museum, a museum without walls, without a single curator, where the displaced tribe of time roams freely. The true fossil, perhaps, was never the bone at all. It is the question itself. What does it mean to belong to an age that is not your own? And in that question, the story of every fossil Pokémon finds its final, most fitting home. Aldea offered us no traditional fossils, no old amber to reach for, no ancient bone to carry to a lab. But the absence in one region does not erase the fossil record of every other. Tonight, having examined the revival chambers of Kanto, the shifting sands of Hoenn's desert, the buried secrets of Sinnoh, and the deeply unsettling fusions of Galar, we step back, we take in the full picture, every fossil, every question. We begin where the fossil revival story first began, in Kanto, with the Helix fossil and the Dome fossil. Omanyte and Kabuto, ancient shellfish and trilobite-like creatures from some of the earliest seas, brought back to life beside the old amber that holds Aerodactyl, a Jurassic pterosaur carved from golden stone. Generation 3 took us to the Hoenn Desert, a landscape that was once seafloor, where the root fossil revived Lileep, a sea lily that swayed in ancient currents, and the claw fossil revived Anorith, an ancestor of Anomalocaris, a predator from the Cambrian depths 500 million years old. Generation 4 finally gave us the proper dinosaurs, Cranidos and Shieldon, a persistent headbutting dinosaur from Sinnoh, and a small armoured herbivore that lived in dense forests. Generation 5 introduced Tirtouga, an ancient sea turtle, and Archen, the so-called first bird, the ancestor of all avian Pokémon. Generation 6 gave us the king, Tyrunt, a youthful Tyrannosaurus, and the towering shimmering Aurus, a sauropod from an ice age. And then Generation 8, the Galar 4, the Chimeras, Dracozolt, Arctovish. Fragments of 4 different species, forced together by a cheerful field researcher named Kalos into creatures that barely function, that suffer breathing on land, that generate electricity to survive their own mismatched anatomies. As we gather this entire lineage, from the soft-bodied invertebrates of the deepest time to the apex predators of the latest Cretaceous, a deeper mystery surfaces. A contradiction baked into the very foundation of the lore. Consider Kabuto. Its Pokédex entry in multiple games states firmly that it inhabited beaches 300 million years ago. That is the oldest specific date given for any Pokémon's existence in the entire franchise. But that number sits in direct conflict with another canonical statement. A scientist working at the ruins of Alph, studying the mysterious unknown and the layered history of the Johto region, makes a very different claim. This scientist insists that ancient Pokémon only appeared on the world stage 2 million years ago. 2 million versus 300 million. A gap so vast it swallows entire geological eras whole. What do we make of this contradiction? Is it an oversight? A relic of an early draft of the world? Or is it exactly what it looks like? Reality is messy. The scientists of the Pokémon world, just like our own, are constantly rewriting what they know based on new evidence. The kanji written on the walls of the ruins of Alph speaks of a sudden appearance of life. The Sinnoh mythology speaks of a creator. The fossil record itself is incomplete. Every new dig threatens to upend the last settled theory. Kabuto stands as a monument to this uncertainty. 300 million years. A number so vast it pushes against the very structure of the timeline. This brings us to the ultimate realization about fossil Pokémon. They are not simply extinct animals brought back unchanged. No process works that cleanly. When a scientist holds a fossil on Cinnabar Island, they are not holding a sleeping creature waiting to open its eyes. They are holding mineralized bone, a shell cast in solid stone. The revival process infuses that stone with life. A mineral infusion that imprints the revived creature with the rock type. A binding element that marks them forever as children of the earth they slept in. They are reconstructions. They are interpretations. The Galar chimeras are the most literal example of this. Mismatched fragments forced together to form a functional whole. But every fossil Pokémon is in a sense a chimera, a creature built from a fragment, fleshed out by the assumptions and the technology of the scientist who revives it. A memory rebuilt from stone, theory, and imagination. Aerodactyl is as much a product of our own Jurassic imagery as it is of its original amber. Aurus is a creature of ice and light, a theory of what a dinosaur might have become. Archen is the missing link, a foundational myth given feathers and breath. The lore is contradictory because the real past is always contradictory. It is a puzzle we cannot finish. The researchers in the ruins of Alph, the excavators in the Unova desert, the cheerful doctor, Kalos in Galar, they are all reaching for something they can barely comprehend. And so, when we look at the fossil record of the Pokémon world, we are not just looking at bones, we are looking at stories. A record of life that spans from the deepest oceans to the highest peaks. From the Cambrian explosions of Anorith's time to the asteroid shadows of Tyrant's extinction. The questions outnumber the answers. The dates do not align. The bodies do not always fit the fossils they came from. But somewhere beneath every cave, every desert, every museum shelf, and every ocean floor, the lost worlds of Pokémon may still be waiting to wake. Not as simple animals to be catalogued and understood, but as echoes, fragments of a deeper history that we will never fully piece together. And in that gap between what we know and what we cannot know, the wonder remains.